She grabbed his arm in the dark parking garage, her manicured nails pressing hard into his jacket sleeve, and said nothing for a full 10 seconds. Just held on. Like letting go would cost her something she couldn't afford to lose again. Nathan Brooks had driven his boss home because her car broke down. That was it. Simple. Professional. Done. Except she whispered 3 words that shattered every boundary between them. Please don't leave yet. And what happened next? What she confessed in a quiet diner at midnight would change both their lives in ways neither of them saw coming. Drop your city in the comments right now. I want to see how far this story travels. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe. You're going to want to see where this one ends. Nathan Brooks was already 40 minutes late. Not late for anything important. Not late for a meeting or a deadline. Late for the only thing that actually mattered to him at 9:47 on a Tuesday night, getting home to his daughter. Emma was 8 years old. She had school tomorrow. She had already texted him twice. Dad, where are you? Dad, the mac and cheese is getting cold. He smiled at his phone in the elevator, thumbing a reply. 5 minutes, monkey, I promise, and stepped out into the 3rd floor of the Harmon Group parking garage, his laptop bag slung over one shoulder, his tie loosened at the collar, his feet sore inside shoes he'd been wearing since 6 in the morning. It had been that kind of day. Budget reconciliation reports. A conference call with the West Coast distribution team that ran 45 minutes over schedule. A vendor dispute that landed in his lap because his department director was out sick. Nathan had handled all of it quietly, efficiently, without a single complaint, because that was what he did. That was who he was. The man who showed up. The man who figured things out. Nobody at the Harmon Group ever stopped to wonder if Nathan Brooks was tired. They just handed him more work and trusted he'd get it done. I was walking toward his car, a 6-year-old Ford F-150 dark blue, reliable, nothing fancy, when he saw her. Standing near the far corner of the garage between 2 concrete pillars in an area where the overhead fluorescent light had been flickering and half dead for 3 weeks, despite 2 reported maintenance requests. Olivia Whitmore, Vice President of Operations, his boss's boss. She was in her full work armor-tailored charcoal blazer silk blouse heels that added 3 inches to a frame that was already commanding without them. Her dark hair was pulled back in the kind of perfect bun that said, I am in control of every single thing in my life. She had her phone pressed against her ear, and she was talking not loudly, but with that compressed, careful tone people use when they are furious and refusing to let it show. Nathan almost kept walking. Almost. But there was something wrong. He could see it in the way she was standing. Too still. One hand braced flat against the concrete pillar beside her, like she needed the wall to hold her up. He slowed down. The conversation on her phone ended. She lowered it. She stared at the car in front of her, a silver Audi A6, elegant and expensive. And for just one moment before she noticed him standing there, Nathan saw something he had never seen on Olivia Whitmore's face in 3 years of working in the same building. She looked completely lost. Then she registered his presence, and the expression vanished. Snapped shut like a steel cabinet. Mr. Brooks. Her voice was crisp and even. Ms. Whitmore. He nodded. Everything okay? It was a polite question. The kind strangers ask when they already know the answer is no, and are giving you a graceful exit to lie and say yes. She almost took it. He could see her mouth begin to form the word fine. Instead, she exhaled through her nose and said, Dead battery. Roadside assistance is telling me 45 minutes to an hour, and I have an early call tomorrow at 6:30. I can jump it, Nathan said. She paused. I beg your pardon. I've got jumper cables in my truck, if it's just the battery. She looked at him the way executives sometimes look at offers of help, uncertain whether accepting is a sign of weakness or simply practical. Practical 1. That would be appreciated, she said. Nathan pulled his truck around. He got the cables out. He popped her hood, connected everything properly, ran the engine for 3 minutes. Then Olivia turned her key. Nothing. He tried again. Another 3 minutes. Another attempt. Still nothing. It's not the battery, he said, coming around to her side. Could be the alternator. Could be something else. Either way, you're not driving this car tonight. She stood beside the open driver's door and for a moment said nothing. She was looking at her phone again, not reading anything, just staring at the screen, the way people do when they're buying themselves 2 seconds to think before they have to react. I'll call a car service, she said. It's going to be a wait. There's a game tonight. Downtown traffic is a nightmare. He hesitated, because what he was about to offer was slightly outside the comfortable boundaries of their professional relationship. But he was a practical man, and practically speaking, she had a problem that had a simple solution. I'm heading north anyway. I can drop you. Olivia looked at him. Not a quick, polite glance. She actually looked at him, taking a brief moment, as if she was recalibrating something. You don't have to do that, she said. I know I don't have to. He lifted his shoulders. You live somewhere north of here. Meridian Towers, on Westfield. That's 6 blocks from my daughter's school. It's on the way. She hesitated for another second. Then something in the set of her shoulders loosened by just a fraction. All right, she said. Thank you. Tateng. The first 3 minutes of the drive were exactly what Nathan expected. Professional. Quiet. A little stiff. Olivia sat with her purse on her lap and her posture perfect, watching the city scroll past the passenger window. She thanked him once more for the trouble. He told her it was no trouble. She asked how long he'd been with the Harmon Group. 3 years, he said. Logistics coordinator, floor 7. You handled the Midwest distribution restructuring, she said. Last spring. I saw your name on the efficiency report. You cut transit time by 11%. He glanced sideways at her. You read that report. I read all the reports that cross my desk. A pause. 11% is not a small number. It wasn't complicated. The routing system just needed someone to actually look at it. Most people with your skill set would have made sure I knew their name, she said. It wasn't an accusation. It was an observation delivered with the precision of someone who spent their days evaluating people. Nathan kept his eyes on the road. I figured the work would do that. She didn't respond to that, but he could feel her looking at him. Traffic thickened as they hit the main boulevard. The radio was on low, some old country station which Nathan reached over to change out of automatic courtesy. Leave it, Olivia said. He looked at her. I like that song, she said simply. It was a George Strait song. Nathan knew it. His late wife had loved George Strait. He left the radio alone. They were 2 blocks from Meridian Towers when her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, and then instead of answering, she pressed decline. Nathan said nothing. It rang again 30 seconds later. She declined it again. The third time she switched the phone face down on her thigh. You don't have to drop me at the front entrance, she said. The side street entrance is fine. All right. He turned onto Westfield. Pulled to the side entrance of Meridian Towers, a tall glass building well maintained, the kind of address that cost serious money. He put the truck in park. Olivia didn't move. She was looking up at the building. At the row of windows on what Nathan guessed was the 10th or 11th floor, dark all of them. The silence lasted 5, 6, 7 seconds. And then she said it, quietly. Almost like she hadn't meant to say it out loud at all. Please don't leave yet. Nathan kept his hands on the wheel. He didn't say anything. He didn't move. She turned toward him, and he saw it again, that brief, unguarded moment he'd caught in the parking garage. The look behind the armor. She recovered faster this time, but he had already seen it. I'm sorry, she said, and her voice was completely steady, completely professional, except for the fact that what she'd just said wasn't professional at all. That was... She shook her head. Forgive me. This has been a long day. Yeah, Nathan said. It has. He paused. There's a diner 2 blocks east. Billy's. They make good coffee and a decent piece of pie. I've got 20 minutes before I need to get back to Emma. She looked at him. Your daughter? Yeah. Olivia seemed to weigh something. Then she picked up her purse and said, I could eat something. Billy's Diner was the kind of place that had been there forever. Vinyl booths, laminate tabletops, and a neon sign in the window, advertising open, 24 hours, in pink and green. The kind of place where the coffee came in thick ceramic mugs, and the waitress called you hon, whether you wanted her to or not. It was almost exactly the opposite of every restaurant Olivia Whitmore usually occupied. She slid into the booth across from Nathan and picked up the laminated menu and looked at it with the expression of a woman who had forgotten places like this existed. "What's good?" she asked. "Depends on what you want. Pie's the answer if you're not sure." "Apple. Best in the city. I'm not exaggerating," the waitress her tag said. Darlene appeared with a coffee pot and 2 mugs without being asked. Nathan held up 2 fingers and pointed at the pie display. Darlene nodded and was gone. Olivia wrapped both hands around her coffee mug and stared into it for a moment. "I haven't been somewhere like this in years," she said. "Where do you usually eat?" "Wherever the client wants to eat." She looked up at him. "Or room service?" "Room service a lot. Roughly 80 nights a year averaged out." She said it matter-of-factly, not complaining, just stating a number the way you'd state a quarterly figure. Nathan did the math. 80 nights. A little more than 2 months a year alone in a hotel room eating food off a tray. "That's a lot," he said. "It's the job." She lifted one shoulder. "You don't build a supply chain network across 14 states without traveling." "No, I guess you don't." The pie arrived. 2 thick slices warm from the case, a careful ribbon of cinnamon on top. Olivia stared at hers, like it was an object she'd forgotten the purpose of. "My mother used to make apple pie," she said. "Yeah. Every Sunday, without fail." A pause. "I haven't been home for a Sunday dinner in—" She stopped, set her fork down. "A while." Nathan took a bite of his pie and didn't push. He'd learned a long time ago in the months after his wife died, sitting in uncomfortable chairs in a grief counselor's office, listening to other people carefully not say the things they needed to say, that sometimes you just had to let the silence do the work. Olivia picked her fork back up. She took a bite. She chewed, swallowed. And then something in her face changed just slightly the way ice changes before it begins to crack. "My divorce was finalized 11 days ago," she said. Nathan set his coffee down. "I'm sorry," he said. "Don't be." The words were automatic reflex. Then she corrected herself. "I am. I'm sorry. That was—" She pressed her lips together. "I've been saying that for 11 days. Don't be sorry it was the right decision, we just grew apart. I've said it so many times I almost believe it." She looked up at him. "But I'm sitting in a diner at 10 o'clock at night because I couldn't make myself walk into that apartment. Which I think means I'm not as fine as I keep telling everyone." It was the most honest thing Nathan had heard an executive say since he'd been at the Harmon Group. He looked at her, really looked at her the same way she had looked at him in the truck and said, "How long were you married?" 11 years. "And you've been telling everyone you're fine for 11 days. "Yes." "That's an impressive ratio," he said. "1 day fine for every year of marriage." She blinked. And then unexpectedly, she laughed a short, genuine sound that she seemed surprised to discover inside herself. "That's a terrible thing to say," she said. "Probably," Nathan agreed. "But you laughed." She looked down at her pie. The defensiveness in her posture had dropped by several degrees. She was sitting differently now, less like a vice president, more like a person. "What about you?" she asked. "You mentioned your daughter, Emma." "Yeah." "Her mother, a beat. She passed 4 years ago." Olivia's expression shifted. "I'm sorry." "Thank you." He said it without deflection, without the automatic, "It's okay people used to paper over grief." He'd learned not to do that. She had a brain aneurysm. It was fast. Which people say like it's a comfort, and I think sometimes it is. But sometimes fast just means you didn't get to say everything you needed to say. Olivia was quiet for a moment. "What would you have said," she asked, "if you'd had more time?" It was a direct question, the kind that people who spend their lives managing other people have learned to ask. He looked at her steadily. "I'd have told her she was right more often," he said. "She used to say I was too quiet, that I kept too much inside." He picked up his mug. She wasn't wrong. And yet here you are, Olivia said, telling a stranger all this. You're not a stranger, he said. You're my boss. That's worse, she said. That's significantly worse. He smiled. She smiled back. And that was the moment. Nathan would think about it later, driving home at almost midnight, checking on Emma, asleep in her bed, standing in his kitchen, eating leftover mac and cheese, cold out of the pot. He would trace everything back to that moment in the diner. Two people smiling at the same time in a vinyl booth over pie. They were both eating with no particular hurry, even though both of them had somewhere to be. By the time Darlene refilled their coffee for the third time and started giving them the subtle look that meant, I have other customers, it was nearly 11:30. Nathan drove Olivia back to Meridian Towers. This time she got out. But before she closed the door, she paused with one hand on the frame and looked back at him. Thank you, she said, for the jumper cables and the pie. Anytime. Nathan, his name in her voice without the formal Mr. Brooks. I appreciate that you didn't pretend not to notice. In the parking garage. She held his gaze for a moment. A lot of people would have just kept walking. A lot of people, he said, have never had a reason to understand what that kind of tired looks like. She held his eyes for 2 seconds longer than she needed to. Then she nodded, closed the door, and walked into her building. He waited until he saw her enter the lobby before he put the truck in drive. I was halfway home when his phone buzzed on the seat beside him. A text. From a number he recognized as Olivia Whitmore's. She'd given it to him in the parking garage while she was troubleshooting the car. The message was 3 words. The pie helped. He read it at a red light. Then he typed back one-handed. Good. Get some sleep. She replied almost immediately. You too, Nathan. He set the phone face down on the seat, watched the light go green, and drove home thinking about the look on her face when she'd said, Please don't leave yet. Not the polished executive's voice, not the vice president's measured cadence. Just a woman's voice, raw and tired and honest, asking the simplest thing in the world. Emma was asleep as expected. He stood in her doorway for a moment, the way he always did. Had done every night since the night the hospital called. The night he had to figure out how to be both parents at once, and watched her breathe. She was sprawled diagonally across her bed, one arm thrown over her eyes, her stuffed elephant, Gerald tucked under her other arm. 8 years old, and she slept like she was fighting someone in her dreams and winning. Nathan loved her so much, it was almost a physical pain. He pulled her door shut quietly and went to the kitchen. Ate the cold mac and cheese, washed the pot, locked the front door, checked the back. Then he sat at the kitchen table for a while in the quiet. His wife's name had been Laura. He still kept a photo of her on the kitchen windowsill, not because he was stuck. His grief counselor had made him examine that question carefully, but because Emma deserved to grow up looking at her mother's face in the morning. He looked at the photo now. He thought about Olivia Whitmore saying, I'd have told her she was right more often. He thought about her saying, I keep too much inside. He thought about a woman who built 14 state supply chains and hadn't been to her mother's for Sunday dinner in longer than she could remember, sitting in a vinyl booth at 10 o'clock at night, eating pie, like it was the first real thing she'd done all year. A lot of people would have just kept walking. He almost had. He was glad he didn't. The next morning, Nathan arrived at the Harmon Group at his usual time. 7:45. Poured coffee in the break room, exchanged nods with the people he saw every day, and sat at his desk on the 7th floor. At 8:17 he got an email. From Olivia Whitmore at harmongroup.com to nathan.brooks@harmongroup.com. Subject RE Vehicle Maintenance Request. Nathan. I've submitted a formal maintenance request for Bay 3 Level 3 regarding the flickering light issue you mentioned. It should have been addressed weeks ago. Thank you for pointing it out. OW. He hadn't mentioned the light. He hadn't said a word about it. She had noticed it herself. From the parking garage, in the dark. He typed back appreciated. Also good morning. A pause of 4 minutes. Then, good morning, Nathan. The weeks that followed were not what either of them expected. They did not plan it. There was no moment where they sat down and made a decision. It happened the way real things happen, gradually, and then all at once. He ran into her in the building lobby one Thursday morning. Both of them carrying coffees. Both of them 5 minutes early. They walked to the elevator together, and the conversation started so easily that Nathan realized, stepping out on the 7th floor, that he'd forgotten to feel like he was talking to his boss. She texted him 3 days later. Not about work. Billy's is open on Sundays. He stared at the message for 30 seconds. Then he typed back, I know. Emma loves the pancakes. 3 dots. Then, would Emma mind if I came? He looked at the message. He looked at it for a long time. Then he walked down the hall to Emma's room, where she was doing her homework at her desk, and looking at it like it had personally offended her. Hey monkey, I need to ask you something. Is it about dinner because I was thinking tacos? It's about Sunday breakfast. He paused. A friend of mine, from work. She wants to know if she can come with us to Billy's. Emma looked up from her math worksheet. Is she nice? Yeah, she is. Does she like pancakes? I genuinely don't know. Emma considered this with the gravity that 8-year-olds reserve for significant life decisions. She can come, she said, but she has to try the blueberry ones. That's the rule. Nathan pulled out his phone and typed, Sunday works. Emma says you have to try the blueberry pancakes. Those are the rules. The reply came back fast. I respect the rules. What time? Decang. Sunday at Billy's Diner was nothing like 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. It was bright, loud. The place smelled like bacon and maple syrup and 40 families worth of weekend morning. Emma arrived in her good jeans and a yellow shirt with a horse on it. Her hair in 2 braids that Nathan had gotten almost even, and she shook Olivia's hand very seriously when they were introduced. I'm Emma, she said. My dad said you had car trouble. Olivia, for possibly the first time in her adult life, seemed slightly at a loss. I did, she said. My dad fixes everything, Emma said, climbing into the booth. One time our dishwasher flooded the kitchen, and he fixed it himself, and only said 2 bad words the whole time. Emma, Nathan said. He told me later what they were, Emma confided to Olivia. But I'm not supposed to repeat them. Something unlocked on Olivia's face. She slid into the booth across from Emma and picked up the menu and said, I would never ask you to break a confidence. Good. Emma pointed at the menu. The blueberry ones are on page 2. That's the rule. Olivia ordered the blueberry pancakes. She ate them carefully, in the deliberate way of someone for whom meals were usually strategic to be consumed efficiently between obligations. But about halfway through, Emma started explaining her theory about why Gerald the stuffed elephant was probably the most intelligent stuffed animal in existence, and Nathan watched Olivia's careful efficiency dissolve into actual listening. Real attention, the kind that doesn't check its phone, Emma could tell. Kids always can. By the end of breakfast, Emma was showing Olivia pictures of Gerald on Nathan's phone, and Olivia was responding with the appropriate seriousness the subject demanded. And Nathan was sitting across the booth, drinking his 3rd cup of coffee, watching 2 people who mattered to him get along like it was the most natural thing in the world. He didn't think he should have been surprised, but he was. Walking to the parking lot afterward, Emma took both their hands simultaneously, one of those 8-year-old things, automatic, unself-conscious, a child reaching out because it felt right. And Nathan felt the exact moment the fingers of Olivia's other hand closed around Emma's small one. He didn't look at her. She didn't look at him. But something shifted. The same way things shift in the quiet of an early morning when the temperature changes and the birds know before the sky does. Chung. 3 Saturdays later. Nathan helped Olivia move the last of her furniture into her Meridian Towers apartment. It had been in storage pieces of a life she and her ex-husband had divided, and she'd been avoiding unpacking because unpacking it alone felt like a statement she wasn't ready to make. Nathan borrowed a hand truck from a neighbor. He moved a bookshelf, 2 side tables, a velvet armchair that weighed considerably more than it looked. He dragged a Persian rug from one end of the living room to the other 3 times, while Olivia stood with her head tilted, deciding. He did it without complaint, because watching her decide was not unpleasant. Left, she said. No right. No, actually, can we try diagonal? Diagonal, he repeated. Is that a no? It's a curiosity. They went diagonal. She was right. The room looked better. You're going to be insufferable about that, he said. About what? Being right. I'm always right about spatial organization, she said without a trace of false modesty. It's a gift. He laughed. She looked at him when he laughed the way she'd been doing. Increasingly, he'd noticed like laughter from him was something she was learning to collect. By 7 o'clock, the boxes were stacked in a manageable pile. The bookshelf was full. The rug was diagonal, and they were sitting on the floor of her living room, eating pizza from the box because she hadn't unpacked the plates yet, and neither of them had thought to care. It looks like a home, he said, looking around. She leaned her head back against the velvet armchair, the too heavy one, and looked around her apartment with the expression of a woman taking stock. It's starting to, she said quietly. He looked at her. She looked at him. And neither of them looked away, quite fast enough. That night, driving home with the pizza box folded on the seat beside him and his hands easy on the wheel, Nathan allowed himself to think about something he'd been carefully not thinking about for several weeks. I was not the kind of man who fell quickly. That had always been true, even before Laura. He thought things through. He measured twice. He was the man who fixed the dishwasher himself and only said 2 bad words because he had already figured out the right approach before he started. But this was different. This had started in a parking garage at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night with a woman who clutched a concrete pillar and pretended she was fine and had progressed without plan, without agenda, without either of them steering it to pizza on the floor of an apartment that was starting to feel like a home. He thought about Emma taking both their hands in the parking lot. He thought about Olivia's face when she looked at Gerald's photos with the appropriate seriousness the subject demanded. I thought about, please don't leave yet. He thought about a George Strait song on a low radio in a dark truck and a woman who said, leave it. And he thought carefully because he was a careful man that something was happening that he hadn't seen coming, and that for the first time in 4 years, he wasn't sure he wanted to stop it. He almost missed it. In the parking garage in the dark with his daughter's texts waiting on his phone and his feet tired and his mind already halfway home. He almost kept walking. He had spent 4 years being the man who did everything right. The good father, the reliable employee, the stable one, the one who never let anything fall apart on his watch. 4 years of measuring twice. 4 years of practicality. And he'd almost walked past the one impractical, unmeasured, unscheduled thing that had happened to him in all that time. He was glad he stopped. But what? Nathan didn't know yet. What neither of them knew, sitting in their separate apartments that night with the lights of the city pressing against the windows, was that the world they'd been quietly building together was about to develop a very public problem. And when it did, everything they'd been careful about would suddenly be on full display, for everyone to see and judge. It started with a Monday morning and a cup of coffee that went cold before Nathan ever got to drink it. He had set it on the corner of his desk at 8:03 a.m. Answered a quick question from one of his team leads, sat back down, and then spent the next 4 hours in back-to-back calls with the Midwest distribution hub without once remembering the coffee existed. That was the rhythm of his life. Things got set down and forgotten in the space of 4 minutes because the next thing was already arriving. But something was different that Monday. He noticed it in the break room at 12:15 when he was reheating the coffee in the microwave. Darlene from accounting smiled at him when she came in. Not the usual polite office smile, something a little wider, a little more deliberate with a flicker of something underneath it that Nathan didn't immediately categorize. He nodded back, pulled his mug out, and went back to his desk. He noticed it again at 2:40 when he was walking through the corridor toward the copier room, and a conversation between 2 people from the 3rd floor stopped half a second before he passed the doorway. Just a half second. Probably nothing. People paused conversations when anyone walked by. He did not put it together until 4:55. I was packing up his laptop bag when Marcus Webb dropped into the chair across from his desk. Marcus ran logistics analysis 1 floor up and had been at the Harmon Group longer than almost anyone. 49 years old, gray at the temples, the kind of man who knew where every body was buried in the building because he'd been there to watch them get buried. He and Nathan had a good working relationship, an honest one. Marcus leaned back in the chair and looked at Nathan, the way doctors look at patients before they deliver the part you're not going to want to hear. "You might want to know," Marcus said, "that there's a thing going around." Nathan zipped his laptop bag. "What kind of thing?" "The kind that has your name in it." Nathan set the bag on the desk and looked at him directly. "Tell me. People are talking about you and Whitmore." Marcus kept his voice flat and even. "No judgment in it, just information. Word is, you've been spending time together, outside the building. I drove her home 3 weeks ago. Her car broke down. I know that. The problem is that a few people also know about the Sunday breakfast at Billy's. And someone saw you going into Meridian Towers on a Saturday afternoon with what they are describing as, and I'm quoting here, a significant amount of furniture moving equipment." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "She needed help moving furniture," he said. "I believe you." Marcus nodded. "That's not the point." "Then what's the point, Marcus?" Marcus leaned forward and put his forearms on his knees. "The point is that when a man in logistics is seen spending his weekends with the VP of operations, people don't see a man helping a friend. They see a man running an angle. And when a woman in Whitmore's position is seen spending time with someone who reports, however indirectly, to her department, people don't see a woman making a friend. They see favoritism. They see liability." He paused. "I'm not saying what I think. I'm telling you what people are saying, and I'm telling you because you're going to want to know before it gets louder." Nathan looked at the cold coffee on the corner of his desk. The same mug he'd set down at 8:03 a.m. and never touched. "How loud is it already?" he said. Marcus did not look away. "Loud enough that Hendricks heard it." Nathan felt something go still inside him. Richard Hendricks was the director of corporate compliance. He was a careful, exacting man who took the employee conduct handbook seriously, and whose name appearing in a sentence about you was never good news. "All right," Nathan said. "I appreciate you telling me." Marcus stood up. He put a hand briefly on Nathan's shoulder, the gesture of a man who has been around long enough to know that sometimes there is nothing useful to say, and the only honest thing you can offer is the weight of your hand for 1 second. Then he was gone. Nathan sat at his desk for a full 3 minutes without moving. Then he pulled out his phone and texted Olivia. He kept it simple. He had to. "We may have a situation. Not urgent, but worth knowing." Her reply came in under 90 seconds. "My office." Now he typed back. "Tomorrow morning is better. Gives us both tonight to think." A pause. Longer this time. Then 7 a.m. Before anyone else is in. 7 a.m. he confirmed. He picked up the cold coffee, looked at it, and put it back down. He barely slept. Not because he was afraid. Not exactly. It was something more complicated than fear, a kind of low-grade, wide-awake clarity that kept him lying on his back at 1 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, running the geometry of his situation in his head. The way he'd run logistics routes in the early days, looking for inefficiencies and points of failure. The situation was this: he had done nothing wrong. He had offered his boss a ride home. He had gone to breakfast with her and his daughter. He had helped her move furniture. Every single one of those things was something a decent person would do for another person who needed help. The situation was also this: it didn't matter. That was the part that kept him awake. Not his guilt, he had none. But the understanding arrived at somewhere around 2 a.m., with the clarity that only sleep deprivation produces, that the gap between what was real and what people were saying was not his problem to solve. What people believed had already become its own separate event, and that event was moving whether he wanted it to or not. He thought about Emma asleep down the hall. He thought about a promotion review that was coming up in his department in the next 2 months, one he hadn't applied for yet, but had been thinking about, because the salary increase would mean summer camp for Emma without pulling from savings. He thought about Olivia. He thought about her face on a Sunday morning, in a bright diner, leaning across a laminate table to look at photos of a stuffed elephant with the attention of someone who was genuinely interested, not performing interest. The way she had laughed at something Emma said. Not a polished laugh, not a vice president's laugh, but something that came up from somewhere real and surprised her on the way out. He turned onto his side. I was not running an angle. He was not looking for access or favor or anything that the people in that building seemed certain he was after. He was a man who had spent 4 years being careful with his heart, because his daughter needed him to be stable and present and whole. And for the first time in 4 years, something was happening that wasn't careful at all, and he had let it happen anyway. And now he was lying awake at 2 in the morning, wondering if careful was actually what he should have been. He fell asleep at 3:17. His alarm went off at 5:45. He got Emma up, made her breakfast eggs, her pick scrambled, packed her bag, dropped her at school, and drove to the Harmon Group with his coffee going cold in the cup holder beside him and his jaw set. Olivia's office was on the 14th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides a desk that looked like it cost more than Nathan's truck, and a view of the city that caught the early light in a way that made it look almost generous. She was already at her desk when he came in at 7:02 a.m. Suit pressed, coffee in hand, legal pad in front of her. The armor was fully on. Nathan closed the door behind him. He sat in the chair across from her desk, the chair that all of her direct reports sat in, the chair that was slightly lower than hers by design, and he looked at her. "Tell me what you heard," she said. He told her. All of it. Marcus's visit. Hendrix's name. The quiet in doorways. The too wide smile from Darlene in accounting. Olivia listened without interrupting. She made 2 notes on the legal pad. Her face was completely controlled. When he finished, she set the pen down precisely. "I'd heard pieces," she said. "Not all of it." Marcus was thorough. "Marcus Webb has been in this building longer than the furniture," she said. "When Marcus comes to you directly, it's because the situation has already passed the point where ignoring it was an option." That was my read, too. She was quiet. She looked at the legal pad. Then she looked out the window at the city catching the early light, and Nathan saw the same thing he'd seen in the parking garage, the moment of stillness before she decided something. "The friendship is real," she said. She didn't look at him. "Whatever else people are saying or think they see, I want you to know I'm clear on that." "I know. I also need you to understand." She stopped, set her coffee down, turned to face him fully. "What I have built here, in this company, I have been here 9 years. I came in as a regional manager. I was passed over for VP twice before the 3rd cycle. There were people in this building who did not believe I should have this office." Her voice was even, but underneath it was something harder. Not anger, but weight. The weight of a thing carried over a long distance. "I am not ashamed of where I am. I earned it. And I will not—" She stopped again. "I cannot let anything compromise that. Not even—" She didn't finish the sentence. Nathan sat with that for a moment. "Not even this," he said, finishing it for her. She held his gaze, and he saw it there, the conflict moving behind her eyes like weather. Because that was the thing about Olivia Whitmore, that the people in the building who whispered about angles and favoritism would never understand. She was not a cold woman. She had become a careful one. There was a significant difference. "I'm not asking you to choose," Nathan said. "I want you to understand that first. I'm not here to put pressure on anything." "I know you're not. But I also need to be straight with you. I'm not ashamed of spending time with you. I'm not going to pretend the last few weeks were a professional networking exercise. That would be insulting to both of us." Something moved across her face. "No," she said quietly. "It would." "So what do we do?" She picked up her pen, set it back down. "I've been thinking about it since your text last night. There's a clean solution. I can request a formal restructuring of the reporting chain in my department. Nathan's logistics division reports up through operations, so technically you are downstream from my oversight. If I request that your direct chain routes through the COO's office instead of mine, it removes the conflict of interest on paper." She paused. "It's the kind of thing that gets done quietly. It won't call attention, and you're comfortable doing that." "It's the correct procedural move," she said. "Yes." Nathan studied her face. That's not what I asked. A beat of silence. No, she said. It isn't. She looked at him for a long moment, the measured assessing look he'd come to recognize as her real attention, not the executive performance. I don't know what I'm comfortable with yet, Nathan. I know what's correct. Those aren't always the same thing. He nodded slowly. All right. Do the restructuring. I think that's right. Good. She picked up her pen and made a note. I'll have it processed by end of week. He stood up to leave, reached the door. Then he stopped with his hand on the frame and turned back. For what it's worth, he said, I think you earned every single thing in this office. And I don't think letting yourself have one thing that isn't about work is going to undo 9 years of what you built. She looked at him. She didn't respond. But she didn't look away either. He walked out. The restructuring was processed on Thursday. Quiet as promised. Routine departmental realignment in the language of the paperwork. Nathan's reporting chain now went through the COO's office. Clean, correct, documented. It did not stop the rumors. He found that out on Friday when Marcus appeared at his desk again, this time at 10 a.m., which was a worse sign than 4:55 p.m. Earlier visits meant faster-moving situations. It's shifting, Marcus said. From what to what? From he's running an angle to she's protecting him. The restructuring got noticed, and the people who noticed it are connecting it to everything else. He pressed his lips together. I want to be honest with you. This is moving up. How far up? Hendricks is not the ceiling on this anymore. I'm hearing Crawford's name. Nathan looked at him. Sandra Crawford was the Chief Human Resources Officer. When her name appeared in a sentence, it meant the situation had crossed from gossip to institutional. Who's feeding it? Nathan said. Marcus looked at him carefully. There are a few people. You want a name? Not yet. He let out a slow breath. Let me handle this myself first. Marcus nodded and left. Nathan sat at his desk. He did not pick up the phone. He did not text Olivia. He looked out the window at the city for 3 minutes and let himself be completely still. Then he opened his email and started working. Because that was what he did. He showed up. He figured things out. He didn't let things fall apart on his watch. But even as he typed in the back of his mind, a single question was starting to grow. Not about the rumors. Not about Hendricks or Crawford or the carefully processed paperwork. The question was simpler than all of that, and harder. I was starting to understand that Olivia Whitmore had spent 9 years building an identity that could survive anything. Scrutiny being passed over, being underestimated, being alone in hotel rooms, 80 nights a year because it was built from the inside out, from intelligence and discipline, and the kind of stubborn refusal to be diminished that people sometimes mistake for coldness. And he was starting to wonder whether a woman who had built herself to be indestructible had left any space inside that architecture for something that couldn't be controlled, processed, or formally restructured to remove the conflict of interest. He was starting to wonder whether the door he was standing in front of was one she actually knew how to open. 2 Saturdays after the meeting in her office, they were at Emma's school soccer game. Olivia had shown up without Nathan having quite expected her. He'd mentioned the game in passing, just mentioned it. And at 10:05 a.m. on a cloudy Saturday, he was standing on the sideline with a paper cup of terrible concession stand coffee, and there she was. She was not in office clothes. That was the thing that arrested him. She was in jeans, real jeans, dark blue, with a cream-colored sweater and her hair down. Not fully down, half pulled back, a few strands loose. She looked like a person. Not an executive, a person. She came and stood next to him without saying anything elaborate. Just appeared, stood beside him, accepted the second paper cup of terrible coffee he silently offered. She's number 7, he said, not looking at her. I know, Olivia said. You mentioned the yellow jersey. They watched Emma for a moment. Emma was faster than most of the kids on the field, built like a small dart, completely fearless about going after the ball, regardless of what was in the way. She's going to get a yellow card someday, Nathan said. She plays like she has something to prove. She probably does, Olivia said quietly. Girls that age always do. He glanced at her. I know because I was her, Olivia said. She was watching the field. Faster than everyone, absolutely convinced that speed would solve the problem, always slightly shocked when it didn't. Did it eventually? Speed, no. She took a sip of the terrible coffee. But the other stuff did. Emma's team scored at that moment, and the sideline exploded, and Emma raised both arms and turned toward the sideline with a grin that took up her entire face, and Nathan raised his coffee cup, and she spotted Olivia next to him, and her grin somehow got wider, and she waved both arms. Olivia raised her cup back. Nathan watched that happen and felt something settle in his chest that he didn't have a clean word for. After the game, Emma ran at Olivia like she'd been expecting her and immediately started explaining in very rapid, slightly breathless detail every decision she had made on the field for the past 45 minutes. Olivia listened to every word with the full attention of someone who was genuinely interested, not performing interest. Asked questions. Asked the right questions, not condescending, not surface level. Emma noticed. She always noticed, walking to the truck afterward. Emma took Olivia's hand like it was a thing she'd always done, and Olivia's fingers closed around hers, and Nathan watched it from 2 steps behind, and thought about the fragility of things built well, and how the world has a way of deciding whether or not it will allow them to stand. He thought about Hendricks. He thought about Crawford. He thought about Marcus Webb, and 2 wide smiles in the break room, and conversations that stopped half a second too early in doorways. And then Emma laughed at something Olivia said, a full, uncomplicated 8-year-old laugh, and the world narrowed down to just that sound for 1 second. He drove them to lunch after. He didn't think about Monday. Monday came anyway. He was at his desk at 8:15 when the email arrived. Not from Marcus. Not from Hendricks. From Sandra Crawford's office. The subject line was 5 words. Workplace Relations Review, please attend. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday, 2 p.m. Crawford's office, 14th floor. Nathan read it twice. Then he forwarded it to Olivia with no message attached. Her reply came back in 4 minutes. I know. I got one too. And then 12 seconds later, Nathan. I need to be honest with you about something. I'm going to need you to give me a day before we talk. I need to think. He read it. Read it again. Typed back. Take the time you need. And then he set his phone face down on his desk and looked at the city through the window and waited for the thing he had known was coming since the moment Marcus Webb sat down across from him and said the word Crawford. Because whatever Olivia was going to think through in the next 24 hours, and he already knew at a bone-deep level what the outcome of that thinking would look like, because he had watched her face in that office as she talked about 9 years of building something, and the 2 times she'd been passed over whatever she decided Nathan was not going to fight it. He was not that kind of man. How was the kind of man who showed up, figured things out, and when someone needed to make a choice that was theirs to make, stepped back and let them make it. Even when stepping back cost him something. Even when it cost him more than he expected. He reached for the coffee, found it cold again, set it back down, went back to work. Because that was what he did. He had no idea that across the building on the 14th floor behind floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the city in early morning light, Olivia Whitmore was sitting at her desk with a legal pad in front of her and her pen in her hand, writing nothing. Staring at the phone on her desk and understanding slowly with the terrible clarity of someone who had just realized she had been here before, had made this choice before, had chosen the career and the correctness and the carefully structured absence of complication. Before that she was standing at the exact same door she had closed 11 years ago, and that she had spent 11 years finding out what was on the other side of that particular choice. And that this time she was not sure she wanted to make it again. The day Olivia asked for did not pass quietly. Nathan felt it the way you feel bad. Weather coming before the sky changes, not in any one specific thing, but in the accumulated weight of small signals. The way his team lead avoided his eyes in the morning stand-up. The way the elevator cleared out 1 floor early when he got on. The way his inbox was completely normal, professionally unremarkable, and somehow louder for it. He worked. He did what he always did. He showed up. But at 11:47 a.m. on Tuesday, his desk phone rang. Internal extension. He picked it up. Nathan Brooks. Mr. Brooks. The voice was professional female, and not one he recognized. This is Janet from Ms. Crawford's office. I'm calling to confirm your Wednesday 2 o'clock. Confirmed, he said. Thank you. Please bring any documentation related to your departmental reporting chain from the past 60 days. He set the phone down. Looked at his desk. 60 days. That was precise. 60 days ago was almost exactly the night of the broken-down car in the parking garage. Someone had been counting. He picked up his phone and texted Marcus 2 words. Who counted? Marcus replied in 3 minutes. Petrov. 3rd floor. Nathan sat with that for a moment. Viktor Petrov ran vendor relations on the 3rd floor. He and Nathan had had a professional disagreement 8 months ago over a routing contract. Nathan had pushed back on a vendor decision that Petrov had championed, and Nathan had been right, and the numbers had proven it, and Viktor Petrov had been the kind of man who kept track of being made to look wrong. Some people. Nathan had learned will wait a very long time for the right moment to collect on a grievance. He texted Marcus back. Thank you. He put the phone in his desk drawer and did not take it out again until 5 p.m. When he did, there was a text from Olivia. 1 line. Can we talk tonight? Not about work. He stared at that last part. Not about work. He typed Billy's. 8 o'clock. She replied, I'll be there. He picked up his bag, said goodnight to the 2 people still at their desks on the 7th floor, and went to get Emma from after-school care. Emma talked about soccer the entire drive home. About a girl on the team named Priya, who could do a move with the ball that Emma was going to learn by Saturday, even if it took her all week. About how Gerald had a dream last night, according to Emma's very detailed internal mythology about her stuffed elephant, a dream involving a jungle and a misunderstanding with a parrot. Nathan listened, responded, laughed at the parrot part because it was genuinely funny the way Emma told it. Hi Maud dinner. Turkey burgers, Emma's current preference. He helped her with math homework. He read with her for 20 minutes. He got her settled and said goodnight and stood in her doorway for the extra moment he always allowed himself. Then he drove to Billy's diner. It was 7:58 p.m. Olivia was already there. She was in the same booth as the first night. She had coffee in front of her. She was not on her phone. She was just sitting both hands around the mug, looking at the table, and she looked like someone who had been thinking so hard and for so long that the thinking had exhausted her in a way that no amount of sleep would fix. Nathan slid in across from her. Darlene appeared. He held up one finger. She nodded and was gone. You look like you haven't slept, he said. I slept 3 hours. That's what I thought. She looked up at him. Her eyes were clear tired, but clear. Whatever she had spent the past 24 hours working through, she had arrived somewhere. He could see it in the set of her jaw. I need to tell you something, she said. And I need you to let me finish before you say anything. All right. She put her hands flat on the table. A grounding gesture. He recognized it. He'd done the same thing in the weeks after Laura died, when he had to say out loud the things that felt too heavy to hold in the air. I was going to pull back, she said. Last night after I got your forwarded email, I sat in my apartment and I made a list. I actually wrote it down, because that's what I do when I need to think. I externalize it. I made a list of everything at risk if I kept doing what I've been doing. My position, my credibility, 9 years of professional capital, the respect of people I've worked very hard to earn that respect from. She paused. It was a long list. Nathan said nothing. He had promised. And then I made the other list. She looked down at her hands. What I was walking away from. She stopped, took one breath. Nathan. The last time I made this choice, career on one side, a person who mattered to me on the other, I chose the career. I told myself it was the right decision. I told myself my ex-husband and I just grew apart, that it was mutual, that nobody was the villain. She looked up. But the truth is, I chose the job every single time there was a conflict. Every trip I didn't cancel. Every dinner I rescheduled. Every Sunday I didn't drive home for pie. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it that was not steady at all. I chose correctly professionally every single time, and I ended up eating room service alone 80 nights a year in a marriage that turned into a courtesy. Darlene appeared with Nathan's coffee, set it down, disappeared. God bless Darlene. I'm not making that choice again, Olivia said. I want you to know that, before Wednesday, before Crawford's office, before whatever happens in that building, I needed to tell you outside of it that I am not walking away. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. I wasn't going to let you, he said. She blinked. What? I was going to let you have your day, and I was going to let you make whatever choice you needed to make because it's yours to make, not mine. But I wasn't going to disappear. He wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. I've been the man who stays, my whole life. I stayed when things were hard because that's who I am. I'm not going to stop being that because some people in a building decided they had opinions about my life. She stared at him. Viktor Petrov has been counting days since October, Nathan said. He's the one feeding it to Crawford's office. She went very still. Petrov. The routing contract dispute, 8 months ago. Something moved across her face. Recognition, then something colder. Not anger. Clarity. I remember. You were right, and he was wrong, and he knew it. People like that wait, Nathan said, and then they find their moment. She was quiet for several seconds. Then she said, I want to handle Wednesday myself. I know. I don't need you to come in and explain anything or defend anything. I know that too. I just needed... She stopped, looked down at her mug. I needed to see you before Wednesday. That's all. I needed to not be sitting across the hall from a meeting room, waiting to give an account of my personal life, without first having said to your face that I know what this is, and I'm not treating it like a problem to be managed. Nathan looked at her. At the woman who had stood in a dark parking garage clutching a concrete pillar pretending to be fine. At the woman who had ordered blueberry pancakes because an 8-year-old had stated them as a rule. At the woman who had sat on a living room floor eating pizza out of a box and said it's starting to feel like a home in the voice of someone who had forgotten what home felt like. Okay, he said simply. She let out a breath. Just one. Like she had been holding it since yesterday morning. Okay, she echoed. They stayed at Billy's until 10 o'clock. They talked about things that had nothing to do with Hendricks or Crawford or Viktor Petrov or reporting chains. Emma's soccer. The routing system that Nathan had spent a week reworking. A book. Olivia had been trying to read for 4 months and kept losing her place in because she kept falling asleep after page 12. Not because it was boring, she insisted, but because it was the first time in years she was relaxed enough to fall asleep before midnight. When they left, Olivia stopped on the sidewalk outside and looked at him. Thank you, she said, for coming. Always, he said. She nodded once. Then she walked to her car, the rented one, her Audi still in the shop, and drove back to Meridian Towers. Nathan sat in his truck for 2 minutes before he started it. I was thinking about Viktor Petrov counting days. About Sandra Crawford's office on Wednesday. About the way institutions process discomfort, not because the people in them are cruel, but because systems are built to protect themselves and anything that doesn't fit the existing categories gets handled. I was also thinking that he had meant what he said. He was the man who stays. He had been that man his whole life, and he had been it alone for 4 years, and he was not interested in stopping. He started the truck, drove home, checked on Emma. Wednesday could wait. Wednesday arrived anyway. Nathan dressed for it, the way he dressed for things that mattered, not overdressed, not performing, just present. Clean dark jeans, collared shirt. The navy jacket that Laura had once told him made him look like a man who knew what he was doing. He wore it now, not for the meeting, but because it was Tuesday's advice 4 years late. He dropped Emma at school at 7:40, drove to the Harmon Group, sat at his desk and worked a full morning without checking his phone more than was reasonable. At 1:45 p.m., he rode the elevator to the 14th floor. Crawford's office was at the end of the hall, glass-walled like most of the executive suites with interior blinds that could be closed for privacy. The blinds were open when he arrived, which meant either Crawford didn't expect the conversation to require privacy, or she wanted people to see that it was happening. Nathan was not sure which interpretation was more comfortable. Janet, the assistant with the precise voice, directed him to a chair outside the office. He sat. At 1:52 the elevator opened and Olivia stepped out. She was in full armor. Dark charcoal suit. Hair in the perfect bun. Heels. The whole architecture of professional invincibility that she wore like a second skin. She walked toward Crawford's office with the contained, deliberate stride of a woman who had walked into difficult rooms before and intended to walk out of this one the same way she entered. She glanced at Nathan when she passed him. Just for a second. He gave her a small nod. She went into Crawford's office, and Janet pulled the door shut. Nathan sat in the chair in the hallway and watched the closed blinds and did not think about the conversation happening behind them. He thought about Emma at soccer practice. He thought about the diagonal rug and the Persian carpet and the way an apartment becomes a home. He thought about George Strait on a low radio. At 2:31, the door opened. Olivia came out first. Her face was controlled, the executive mask fully engaged. She walked past Nathan without stopping, turned the corner, and was gone. Janet appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Brooks, Ms. Crawford will see you now." He went in. Sandra Crawford was a compact woman in her mid-50s, with reading glasses pushed up on her head, and the look of someone who had heard every version of every story this building had generated in 15 years. She gestured at the chair across from her desk. "Sit down, Mr. Brooks." He sat. "I'll be direct with you," she said, folding her hands. "We've received concerns from multiple sources about the nature of your relationship with Miss Whitmore. The restructuring of your reporting chain, while procedurally correct, has generated additional questions rather than resolving them." "What kind of questions?" Nathan said. "Whether the restructuring was initiated to provide cover for a personal relationship rather than to address a legitimate organizational concern." She held his gaze. "I'm not here to adjudicate your personal life. That's not within my mandate. What I am here to address is whether there has been any professional misconduct, favoritism, preferential treatment, conflict of interest that compromised departmental decision-making." "There hasn't been," Nathan said. "My work record is clean. My performance metrics are documented. If someone is suggesting I received preferential treatment because of a personal friendship, I would invite them to point to a single concrete example." Crawford looked at him. "Confident answer." "It's an accurate one." "Ms. Whitmore said something similar." A pause. "Somewhat more formally phrased." Nathan waited. Crawford unfolded her hands. "Mr. Brooks, I'm going to be honest with you, which is not always the thing I do in these meetings. What I have in front of me is a complaint filed by an employee with a documented history of grievances, one of which involved you specifically 8 months ago. The complaint is motivated at least in part by something other than genuine concern for institutional integrity." She looked at the folder in front of her. "That doesn't mean I can simply dismiss it, but it does affect how I weight it." "I understand," Nathan said. "What I'm going to do," Crawford said, "is document this conversation. Document Ms. Whitmore's conversation, and file both alongside the existing restructuring paperwork. I'm going to recommend no further action pending any new substantiated complaint." She took off her reading glasses. "What I'm going to ask you to do, and this is a request, not an order, is to be thoughtful. Not about what you do with your personal life. That is yours. But about visibility. This building runs on perception as much as it runs on procedure, and right now perception is the thing that is working against you." "I appreciate your candor," Nathan said. "Don't thank me yet," Crawford said. "Viktor Petrov is not finished. I know his patterns. He'll look for another angle." She held his gaze. "I'm telling you this because you struck me in the 11 minutes you've been in this office as a man who prefers to know what's coming." Nathan looked at her steadily. "I do." "Good." She stood, which meant the meeting was over. "That will be all, Mr. Brooks." He stood, shook her hand, walked out. In the elevator alone, going back down to the 7th floor. He let out one slow breath and rolled his neck and thought, Petrov is not finished. 3 words that changed the shape of everything that came after. He texted Olivia when he got back to his desk. 2 words, call me. She called in 4 minutes. He stepped into an empty conference room and closed the door. "How did yours go?" he said. "She was fair." Olivia's voice was steady. "More fair than I expected. She documented everything and told me no further action for now." "She told me the same thing. She also told me Petrov isn't done." A silence. Then, "I know." "You knew before she told me." "Viktor Petrov has been at this company 11 years, Olivia said. "I know how he operates. He files, he waits, he files again. He's not interested in winning on the first round. He's interested in attrition." "So what do we do?" Another silence. Longer. Nathan waited. "I don't know yet," she said. "But Nathan, I need you to understand something. Whatever comes next, I am not going to handle it the way I handle everything else in that building." Her voice shifted slightly, not louder but different, like something stripped down to its actual surface. "I'm not going to process it and distance it and turn it into a procedural action item. That's what I did with my marriage for 11 years, and I know exactly where that road ends." A breath. "I just need you to know that." "I hear you," Nathan said. "Okay." She paused. "How's Emma?" The question hit him not because it was unusual, she asked about Emma often now, but because of the moment it arrived in. Sitting in a borrowed conference room with the fallout of a formal HR meeting still settling around him, and she asked about Emma. "She's great," he said, "working on that Priya move." "The one with the ball." "The one with the ball." "Good," Olivia said, and she almost sounded like she was smiling underneath everything else. "She'll get it by Saturday." "That's what I said." He walked back to his desk, worked the rest of the afternoon, said goodnight to his colleagues, got Emma from after school, made dinner. That night after Emma was in bed, he sat at the kitchen table and looked at Laura's photo on the windowsill. "Viktor Petrov is not finished." He turned the words over, thought about the shape of what was coming, thought about attrition, the strategy of the patient person, the person who doesn't need to win today because they have already decided that time is on their side. Nathan was a patient man. He had learned patience the hard way, in hospital waiting rooms, in grief counselors' chairs, in every morning of the last 4 years, when getting up was an act of will as much as habit. But there was a difference between endurance and just absorbing damage. And somewhere between Crawford's office and the kitchen table, Nathan had begun to understand that what was coming was going to require more than patience. It was going to require a decision. Not about the rumors, not about the procedures or the reporting chains or Viktor Petrov's carefully filed grievances. A decision about what kind of man he was going to be in the middle of this. About how much of his life he was willing to let be shaped by someone else's agenda. He thought about that for a long time. He went to bed at midnight. Set his alarm for 5:45. What happened next came from a direction he hadn't seen. It was Thursday morning, 8 days after Crawford's meeting. The rumor had settled into a lower register, still present, still circulating, but less acute. Nathan had been careful. Olivia had been careful. They had said nothing and done nothing at work that could be categorized as anything other than professional. Then the email arrived. It came to Nathan's work account at 9:14 a.m. The sender was an address he didn't recognize, a personal Gmail account, not a Harmon Group address. The subject line said, "Thought you should know." He opened it. The email was 4 paragraphs. The writing was careful, deliberate, like someone who had thought for a long time about every word. The substance of it was a claim that Nathan's 11% efficiency improvement on the Midwest routing system, the report Olivia had cited by name in his truck on the night of the drive home, had been achieved by implementing a methodology borrowed without attribution from a proposal submitted by a junior analyst in the department 18 months earlier. A proposal that had been rejected. The junior analyst's name, according to the email, was Daniel Yee, and the email was signed, "A friend of Daniel's." Nathan read it twice. His hands were completely still on the keyboard. He felt in the space of about 15 seconds the specific variety of cold that arrives not from temperature, but from understanding exactly what you're looking at and what it means. This was the second angle. Petrov had pivoted. He had gone from personal conduct to professional integrity. Instead of attacking the friendship, he was attacking the work. Nathan sat back in his chair. He thought about the routing methodology. He knew exactly where it came from. He had developed it over 6 weeks, documented every step, built it from scratch, using transit data and carrier performance records that predated Daniel Yee's time in the department. He had the documentation. It existed. The timestamps existed. But he also knew that none of that mattered yet. What mattered right now was that the email existed, that someone had sent it, and that in this building at this moment, with his name already in circulation for a different reason, the existence of the allegation was the damage, not the truth of it. He forwarded the email to Olivia with 3 words. "Read this. Now." She called him in 2 minutes. "Where did this come from?" she said. Not a question. A statement in the voice of a woman who was putting pieces together in real time. "Petrov's second angle," Nathan said. He went from personal conduct to professional integrity. "Can you document the methodology development? Every step, time-stamped. The proposal data is in the system archives. Pull it all today," she said. "Every record. Send it to me directly, not through the department server." "Already starting." "Nathan." Her voice shifted, not the executive, just the person. "Are you okay?" The question surprised him. Not because it was unusual from her, she asked that more and more recently, but because of the timing. Right in the middle of strategy, she stopped to ask. "Yeah," he said. "I'm okay." "This is what he does," she said. "He finds the thing that matters to you, and he goes after it. Your work matters to you." "It does." "He made a mistake," she said. "Because you're actually right, and right with documentation." A pause. "Don't let him make you doubt that." Nathan looked at his screen, at the email still open in front of him, at the careful, deliberate paragraphs written by someone who had spent time on this, who had decided that if they couldn't get him on one thing, they would find another. "I don't doubt it," he said. "Good." Her voice went back to crisp. "Documentation. Today. All of it. Send it directly to me." Done. He spent the rest of the morning pulling records. Timestamps, archived data, the original development notes he'd kept in his project management system. By noon, he had a complete file, every step of the routing methodology dated and sourced, provably predating any work Daniel Yee had submitted. He sent it to Olivia at 12:47 p.m. Her reply came at 1:15. "This is clean. This is completely clean. I'm taking it to Crawford today." He read that and set the phone down. He sat in the quiet of the conference room, where he'd pulled the records alone, and let himself feel for just a moment what it felt like to be a man who had done everything right and was being asked to prove it because someone with a grievance had decided to use the truth as a weapon by bending it. He felt it. And then he set it aside, because there was a more important thing happening under all of this, and he had started to see it clearly. Viktor Petrov was not the problem. The rumors were not the problem. The problem was that Olivia Whitmore had spent 11 years building walls so precisely constructed that they had kept out everything, including the things that might have saved her marriage, including the things that might have made the hotel rooms less lonely. And those walls were still up. The restructuring and the Crawford meeting and the careful professional calibration of everything they did together, these were not signs that Olivia was pulling back. She had said she wasn't, and he believed her. But Nathan had started to understand that believing something was not the same as being fully inside it. She was still managing this, still treating it as a problem to be solved correctly, rather than a life to be lived honestly. And he understood why. 9 years of professional survival created patterns that didn't dissolve over blueberry pancakes and diagonal rugs, no matter how good those things were. The question Nathan was sitting with in the quiet of that borrowed conference room was not what Petrov would do next, or what Crawford would decide, or how the documentation would land. The question was whether Olivia Whitmore, who had told him she wasn't going to make the same choice again, was actually capable of not making it, and whether he was the kind of man who would wait long enough to find out. He already knew his answer, but he was beginning to wonder with a clarity that was uncomfortable precisely because it was clear whether she knew hers. The documentation went to Crawford at 2:30. By 4 p.m., Nathan had a brief email from Crawford's office acknowledging receipt and informing him that the matter was under review. At 4:47, Marcus appeared at his desk. He sat down. He looked at Nathan with the expression of a man delivering information he finds neither good nor bad, simply real. Petrov got called into Crawford's office at 3:30, Marcus said. Came out looking like he'd swallowed something he didn't agree with. How long was he in there? Nathan said. 40 minutes. 40 minutes was a long meeting in Crawford's office for a man who thought he had the upper hand going in. Thank you, Marcus, Nathan said. You got lucky, Marcus said. You had the documentation. It wasn't luck, Nathan said. I always document everything. Marcus looked at him for a moment. Then something in the older man's face shifted a small adjustment, the kind that happens when you revise an assumption you didn't know you were holding. Yeah, Marcus said quietly. I can see that. He left. Nathan finished the day, packed up, said goodnight. In the elevator going down, he pulled out his phone, looked at it. Did not text Olivia. She was in a meeting she'd texted at 4:30 to say so, and she would find him when she was ready. He had learned that about her. She needed the space to come out the other side of things herself before she could fully inhabit a conversation with someone else. He understood it. Laura had been the opposite. She needed to process out loud in real time with someone in the room. And he had learned that too, had adapted, had met her where she was. He was good at that, meeting people where they were. The elevator opened on the lobby. He walked through the building doors into the evening air. His phone buzzed as he reached the parking garage. From Olivia. One line. Crawford is reopening the original complaint review. Petrov has been asked to provide documentation for the claim. He doesn't have any. Nathan stopped walking. Read it. Then he typed back. Because there isn't any. Her reply. Exactly. And then after a pause of 40 seconds, Nathan. I need to tell you something. Can you come by tonight? Not Billy's. My place. He stood in the parking garage. In nearly the same spot where weeks ago he had pulled jumper cables from the back of his truck and connected them to a dead battery that turned out not to be the problem after all. He looked at the text for a long moment. Then he typed, Give me an hour. Emma's at my neighbor's tonight for a sleepover. Her reply was immediate. I'll make coffee. He drove home. Checked in with his neighbor who confirmed Emma was fine and absorbed in a movie and likely wouldn't notice if a small earthquake occurred. He changed out of the work clothes, washed his face, stood in the bathroom for a moment looking at himself. How was a 35-year-old man who drove a 6-year-old truck and raised his daughter alone and went to sleep most nights thinking about logistics and soccer games and whether Emma had remembered to pack her lunch. He was not impressive in the ways this city usually measured impressive. He did not have a corner office or a company car or a reputation that preceded him into rooms. What he had was this: he showed up. He told the truth. He did not run from hard things. He did not let people fall when he had a hand free to catch them. He looked at himself in the mirror and he thought, that is enough. That has always been enough. He drove to Meridian Towers. He rode the elevator to the 11th floor. He knocked on her door. She opened it, and what he saw on her face in the first unguarded second, before the executive composure assembled itself, was something he had not seen before. Not the tiredness, not the controlled professionalism, not even the rare surprised laugh. It was simpler than all of those things. She was glad to see him. Not relieved, not grateful, not strategically pleased, just glad. The way a person is glad when someone they wanted arrives. He stepped inside. She handed him the coffee she had promised. And she said very quietly, standing in the hallway of the apartment that was starting to feel like a home. I figured something out today. Tell me, he said. She looked at him with the same clear, direct attention she had given him in a diner at 10 o'clock at night, weeks ago, when she had first said out loud the things she had been pretending not to feel. I figured out, she said, that I have been treating this us like a risk to be managed, even when I told myself I wasn't. She held his gaze. And I'm done doing that. Nathan looked at her. The city pressed its lights against the windows. He said nothing for a moment, just looked at her. At the woman who had asked him not to leave, and then had almost made herself leave, and had come back from the edge of that choice, and was standing in her own doorway saying out loud the thing that was actually true. "Good," he said. "That's all you're going to say. What else is there to say?" She looked at him for another second. Then she moved, crossing the 2 feet of hallway between them, and she put her arms around him. Not dramatically, not as a movie moment, but the way a person holds on to something real after a long time of holding on to nothing. He held her back. Outside the city went on being the city. Inside in the apartment with the diagonal rug and the bookshelf and the 2 heavy velvet armchair, something settled. Not perfectly, not completely. There was still Crawford's office and Petrov's next angle and the building full of people with opinions about lives that weren't theirs to weigh in on. But in this hallway right now, there was just 2 people. One of them had asked the other not to leave, and the other one had stayed. The morning after felt like the first morning of a different kind of life. Not because anything dramatic had happened. Not because the city looked different or the problems had resolved themselves overnight. Viktor Petrov still existed. Crawford's Review was still open. The building full of people with opinions about lives that weren't theirs was still standing on the corner of 5th and Harmon, and Nathan still had to drive to it in 45 minutes. But something had shifted in the architecture of things, the way a house settles after years of resisting its own foundation. Quietly, finally, into what it was always going to be. Nathan made Emma breakfast at 6:15. Scrambled eggs again, her standing order on school days. She had come home from the sleepover with the specific satisfied energy of a child who had stayed up 2 hours past her bedtime and felt no remorse about it whatsoever. "Dad," she said, fork in hand, completely serious. "Priya says if you visualize the move before you do it, your body already knows what to do." Priya sounds like a sports psychologist. She's 9. Emma considered this. But she might be right. She might be, Nathan agreed. He dropped her at school at 7:38. Sat in the pickup line for 2 minutes longer than necessary after she'd gone in, watching the doors close behind her yellow jacket, and thought about the night before. About standing in a hallway with his arms around a woman who had finally stopped managing the situation and just stood in it. He had driven home at 11. Not because he wanted to, but because he was a father, and fathers go home, and that was a fact of his life he had never once resented. He texted Olivia at 7:52 from the parking lot of a gas station where he stopped for coffee. Just 2 words. "Good morning," she replied in under a minute. "Good morning, Nathan." And then Crawford's office sent me a calendar invite. Friday at 10. He stared at that. Friday. 2 days away. He typed, "Together," or separate her reply, "Together." He sat with that for a moment. Together was new. Together meant Crawford had made a decision about how to frame this, and whatever that frame was, it applied to both of them in the same room at the same time, which was either very good or an entirely different category of complicated. He typed, "I'll be there." Drove to the Harmon Group. Parked. Rode the elevator to 7. Sat at his desk and opened his inbox and found between a distribution update and a vendor confirmation an email from an address he recognized this time. Viktor Petrov, Harmon Group address. Sent at 6:43 a.m. The subject line was regarding Tuesday's matter. Nathan opened it. It was 3 sentences. The writing was less careful this time. Faster, slightly off its earlier precision, the way a person writes when they are not composing, but reacting. Mr. Brooks, I understand there may have been some confusion regarding the origin of certain methodologies. I would like to discuss this directly man-to-man before Friday's meeting. My office today at noon. Nathan read it twice. Then he forwarded it to Olivia with one line. He wants a meeting, today, before Friday. She called immediately. Not texted. Called. "Don't go," she said before he finished his greeting. "I wasn't planning to." "Good." Her voice was sharp, not at him, but at the situation. He could hear her thinking. He's panicking. Crawford must have told him the documentation review was not going in his direction. He wants a private conversation so he can reframe the narrative before Friday puts it on record. That's what I read too. Do not engage with him outside of official channels, she said. Not in a hallway, not in the break room, not in an elevator. If he approaches you directly, you tell him anything you have to say will be said in Crawford's office. Already decided that. A pause. Then her voice dropped a register. How are you this morning? The shift from tactical to personal. She was doing that more, the switching, the deliberate choosing to be a person in the middle of a strategy conversation. I'm fine, he said. Good, actually. Good, she said. And he could hear it again, that particular warmth underneath the word that she was no longer trying to moderate. Friday is going to be fine. I know. Petrov overplayed, she said. He went after your work because he thought it was the softer target. He didn't expect you to have documentation that comprehensive. I always document everything, Nathan said. I know that now. A beat. I also know why. It's not because you expected to need it. It's because you do good work and you keep records of it because that's what you do. He was quiet for a moment. Yeah, he said. That's what I do. Friday, she said. 10 a.m. I'll be there. He declined Petrov's meeting request at 9:30 a.m. with a two-sentence reply. Thank you for reaching out. Any matters related to the current review process are better addressed through official channels. He copied Crawford's office on the response. At 10:15 his desk phone rang. Internal. He picked it up. Mr. Brooks. Janet's precise voice. Ms. Crawford asked me to acknowledge your email. She appreciates the appropriate handling. Thank you, Janet. He set the phone down, looked at his desk, thought appropriate handling, as though the last several weeks had been a project with milestones and deliverables and a final presentation. In some ways, he supposed they had been. Marcus appeared at noon. Not to deliver information. This time he put a sandwich on Nathan's desk without comment, the kind of gesture that required no explanation and offered none. You didn't have to do that, Nathan said. I know, Marcus said, and walked back to his own desk. Nathan ate the sandwich, worked the afternoon, stayed late to finish a distribution analysis that had been waiting 3 days for his attention, left the building at 6:30. Thursday was quiet, in the way that the day before, a significant thing is always quiet, not peaceful, tightly wound like a spring under careful pressure. Nathan noticed it in himself when he woke up, the controlled steadiness of a man who has made peace with an outcome he can't fully control. He took Emma to school. He bought 2 coffees from the cart outside the building instead of the break room machine. He set one on his desk and drank the other on the walk from the lobby to the elevator, and thought not for the first time about Laura. Laura had been the talker, the processor. She would have had 3 phone calls and a color-coded notes app and a very specific playlist for situations like this one. She would have made him tell her every detail of every conversation with Crawford and Petrov and Olivia, and she would have interrupted halfway through each one with the observation that was actually the most useful thing he'd heard, and she would have been right. He still talked to her sometimes. Not out loud, he was a practical man, not a mystical one, but in the back of his head, in the quiet of his kitchen at night, in the way he made decisions. He ran them past her. It was a habit he had not tried to break. He ran Friday's meeting past her Thursday night standing at the kitchen sink. I thought, Laura, there's a woman who asked me not to leave and I didn't, and now I'm about to sit in a room with the head of HR and find out what the institution thinks about that. He thought she would have said something like, Nathan Brooks, if you are running your life by what an institution thinks about it. I did not raise you right, and I didn't raise you at all. I just married you. But the point stands. He smiled at the window. Friday arrived. Howe was at his desk by 7:30. He handled 2 hours of routine work with the focused efficiency of a man who has learned to compartmentalize, not to suppress, but to set aside cleanly. The way you set a fragile thing on a high shelf until you have the time to handle it properly. At 9:45, he rode the elevator to the 14th floor. Olivia was already in the hallway. She was standing, not sitting, which told him something about her state. She was in dark navy today, not the charcoal armor, but something slightly different. Still executive, but less fortress. She was looking at her phone when he came around the corner, and she looked up when she heard him and her shoulders dropped by exactly 1 controlled degree. "You're early," she said. "So are you." "I'm always early." She pocketed the phone. "It's a control mechanism." "I know," he said. She looked at him for a second. Then she said very quietly, "Thank you for not making me do this alone." "You wouldn't have let me," he said. 3 months ago. She held his gaze. "No, I wouldn't have." The door to Crawford's office opened at exactly 10. Janet waved them in. They sat in the 2 chairs across from Crawford's desk, side by side, not the standard single-chair configuration of their previous individual meetings. Crawford had arranged this deliberately. Nathan clocked it the moment he sat down. Crawford looked at both of them. She had the reading glasses on this time, and a folder that was notably thicker than the ones from their previous meetings. She opened it, looked at something, closed it, and set it to one side. "I'm going to be clear," Crawford said. "That is my consistent preference, and I see no reason to depart from it today." She looked at Nathan first. "Mr. Brooks, the documentation you provided regarding the Midwest routing methodology has been reviewed by 2 members of our technical compliance team. Their assessment is that the methodology was developed independently, is fully original, and predates any similar work submitted by anyone else in this department by approximately 14 months. The allegation was not supported." Nathan nodded once. "Thank you." Then Crawford looked at Olivia. "Ms. Whitmore, the original conduct concerned the one regarding potential conflict of interest related to your personal relationship with Mr. Brooks has been reviewed in light of the restructuring you initiated, the documentation of your HR disclosure, and the timeline of events." She paused. "I find no evidence of professional misconduct. The restructuring was timely, appropriate, and initiated proactively rather than reactively. That distinction matters." Olivia said nothing. She was very still, the way she got when she was processing something significant and not allowing the processing to be visible. Then Crawford set her glasses on the desk and folded her hands and said the thing Nathan had not expected. "What I want to say next is off the record," she said. "Meaning it will not appear in any documentation, it is not part of any official finding, and you are under no obligation to respond to it." She looked at both of them. "I have been in human resources for 22 years. I have sat across this desk from a great number of people in situations that superficially resembled yours. What I can tell you from 22 years of paying close attention to human beings is that the situations that caused real institutional damage were never the ones where 2 people developed a genuine connection. They were the ones where someone used power to take something that wasn't freely given, or where dishonesty created a vacuum that rumor filled." She looked directly at Olivia. "You disclosed, you restructured, you documented." Then she looked at Nathan. "You maintained professional standards under sustained pressure from someone with a documented grievance, and you did it without retaliating and without complaining, formally." She paused. "Informally, I want you both to know that what I observed in this process impressed me. That observation will have no bearing on any future HR matters." She picked her glasses back up. "That's all." They stood, shook her hand, walked out. In the hallway, Janet was already resetting the office for whatever came next. The building moved on. It always did. Nathan and Olivia stood in the hallway for a moment. Neither of them immediately spoke. Then Olivia said, "She said impressed." "She did. Sandra Crawford does not use that word casually." "No," Nathan said. "I don't think she does." Olivia was quiet for another second. Then she let out one breath, slow, deliberate, and something in her face that had been held under pressure for weeks released by a visible degree. Not dramatically, not a collapse or a flood of emotion. Just release. The way a fist slowly opens. "Come to dinner tonight," she said. "Bring Emma. I'll cook." He looked at her. "You cook?" "I'm better at it than you might expect," she said. "Emma's going to want to inspect your kitchen," he said. "She has opinions about kitchens." "I am aware," Olivia said. "I have met Emma." He smiled. She looked at it, collected it the way she'd been doing since Billy's Diner, the way he'd noticed from almost the beginning. 7 o'clock, she said. Tell Emma I'm making something that isn't pancakes, so don't bring any expectations. She'll bring them anyway. I know. And there it was again, the almost smile, the one that came from somewhere real. I'm counting on it. They walked to separate elevators. Nathan rode down to 7, sat at his desk. His phone buzzed almost immediately. Not Olivia, not Marcus. The number was one he didn't recognize. Local area code, he answered. Nathan Brooks. Mr. Brooks. Male voice, careful. My name is Daniel Yee. I think you got an email last week that mentioned me. Nathan's hand tightened on the phone. I did, he said very carefully. I want you to know I didn't send that email, Daniel Yee said. I didn't write it. I didn't authorize it, and I had no idea someone was going to use my name in it until 2 days ago. A pause. He sounded young, late 20s maybe, with the slightly anxious precision of someone who has rehearsed what he's going to say. Someone asked me questions about the routing project months ago. I thought it was casual, colleague stuff. I didn't know they were going to frame it the way they did. Petrov, Nathan said. A silence. I can't say that. You don't have to. Nathan leaned back in his chair. Daniel, I appreciate you calling, genuinely. I didn't think it was right, Daniel said. What was done? I've seen your routing work. It's good work. It's original. Another pause. I just wanted you to know that from me. I hear you, Nathan said. Thank you. He ended the call, sat for a moment, picked up the phone, and forwarded Daniel Yee's number to Olivia with one line. He called me. He told me what I needed to know. You might want a record of that conversation. Her reply, already on it. He set the phone down. He thought about Viktor Petrov sitting somewhere in this building right now, and he felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction. Just the absence of the weight he'd been carrying for weeks, like setting down a bag you'd been holding so long you forgot it was in your hand. That was what it felt like when someone's worst effort against you runs out of road. The day finished. He collected Emma from school. She talked about soccer and Priya and a movie she wanted to see, and a book she'd found in the library that was about horses and also possibly magic. She wasn't sure yet. She was only on page 4. He let her talk. All the way home, all through the process of changing out of her school clothes and washing her hands and asking twice what they were doing for dinner. We're going to Olivia's, he said. She's cooking. Emma stopped in the middle of the kitchen. Olivia's cooking. That's what she said. Does she know how to cook? She says yes. Emma considered this with profound seriousness. What's she making? She didn't tell me. Dad. Emma gave him the look, the one that said he was failing in his information-gathering responsibilities. That's important information. I know. I'm sorry. Emma was still thinking. Then, is Gerald allowed to come? I don't see why not. Okay. Decision made. She picked up Gerald from the counter. The stuffed elephant lived in several locations throughout the house, migrating between Emma's room, the kitchen counter, the couch, and occasionally Nathan's truck, and tucked him under her arm. Tell her we're coming. He texted Olivia. Emma is bringing Gerald. This was non-negotiable. Her reply 30 seconds later, Gerald has a standing invitation. 7 o'clock. They arrived at 7:03, which was close enough. Olivia answered the door in clothes that were not office clothes and not the jeans and sweater of the soccer game, but something in between, comfortable, real. Her hair was down. The apartment smelled like something that involved garlic and something slow-cooked. Emma walked in, looked around with the critical eye of an 8-year-old conducting a kitchen inspection, and announced, "It smells good." "Thank you," Olivia said. "Gerald agrees," Emma added. "I'm glad he approves." Olivia looked at Nathan over Emma's head, and in that look was something that he recognized now, the shorthand of two people who have been through something together and come out on the same side of it. He handed her the wine he'd brought. She took it. Their hands were close on the bottle for 1 second. "Come in," she said. "Dinner's almost ready." Nathan stepped inside. The apartment with the diagonal rug and the heavy velvet armchair and the bookshelf that had taken 3 trips from storage to fill the apartment, that had been a reminder of an empty life, was lit and warm and smelled like food made by someone who was happy to be making it. He closed the door behind him. Dinner was chicken and roasted vegetables and bread from a bakery 2 blocks away, and the wine Nathan had brought, which turned out to be exactly right without him having planned it. Emma ate with the appetite of someone who had been at soccer practice and not thought about food since 11 a.m. She told Olivia about the horse and possibly magic book. She asked 3 questions about what was in the food and then ate the answers without complaint, which was extraordinary for Emma, who had strong feelings about vegetables. At one point, somewhere between the bread and the end of the wine, Emma looked up from Gerald, whom she had been explaining the meal to in a quiet undertone, and said to Olivia very directly, "Do you like it here in this apartment?" Olivia looked at her. "I'm starting to," she said. "It's nicer when people are here," Emma said with the authority of someone stating an obvious fact. "Houses are nicer when people are in them." "They are," Olivia agreed. "Our house is nicer with you in it too," Emma said. "When you come over." Nathan set his glass down very carefully. Olivia looked at Emma for a moment. Something moved across her face. Not the professional mask, not the executive composure. Just a person being surprised by a small truth delivered without any agenda at all. "That's a very kind thing to say," Olivia said. "I know," Emma said simply. "I'm very kind." She picked Gerald back up. "Dad says so." Nathan coughed into his napkin. Olivia looked at him. Her eyes were bright in the warm light, and she was not even trying to hide that she was moved, not crying, not dramatically affected, just clearly, visibly touched in the way that something small and honest touches you when your defenses are down and you've stopped pretending they were ever necessary. After dinner, Emma fell asleep on the couch with Gerald and the horse book under her arm, 2 pages further than she'd been that morning. Olivia draped a blanket over her with the careful, practiced hands of someone who had watched this done and understood instinctively how to do it. Nathan washed the dishes. She dried. They did it without discussing who would do what in the easy silence of people who have started to know each other's rhythms. When the last dish was put away, they stood in the kitchen. The apartment was quiet. Emma's breathing was audible from the couch, slow and deep. Olivia leaned against the counter. She was looking at Emma. "She said houses are nicer with people in them," she said. "She's not wrong," Nathan said. "She's never wrong," Olivia said, with the specific warmth of someone who has been paying close enough attention to know. "It's mildly terrifying." He leaned against the counter next to her. They were close but not touching, looking together at the child asleep on the couch with her elephant and her horse book. "Olivia," he said. "Yeah. I need to tell you something." She turned to look at him. Her face was open in a way it almost never was in the building in the professional armor, in the careful calibration of a woman who had learned to protect herself from a position of power. Open the way it had been in the parking garage, in the diner, in the hallway 3 nights ago. "Crawford's meeting is over," he said. "Petrov is finished. The documentation is filed and the review is closed." He held her gaze. "Which means there's no more institutional complexity to manage. No restructuring to process, no formal channels to route things through." He paused. "It's just us now. And I want to make sure you know that I know that, and I'm not confused about what I want." She was quiet for a moment, watching him. "What do you want?" she said. "This," he said simply. "This is what I want. Dinner and Emma asleep on the couch and dishes and whatever comes next." He did not look away. "I'm not running an angle. I'm not positioning for anything. I'm a man who stopped in a parking garage because a woman I barely knew looked like she needed someone to stop." She looked at him for a long time. "You almost kept walking," she said. "Almost," he agreed. "But you didn't." "No." She turned so she was facing him directly. She reached out and put her hand flat on the center of his chest, not reaching for him, not pulling him closer, just resting her hand there over his heart, like she was checking that it was real. "I spent 11 years not letting anyone in," she said. "And I spent the first 3 months I knew you building walls around the ways I was letting you in anyway, because I was so convinced that wanting something was the same as losing something. And now," he said. "And now Emma is asleep on my couch," she said. And my kitchen smells like food I made for people I actually wanted to feed. And I'm standing here understanding that the thing I've been afraid of is not losing what I've built." She looked up at him. "The thing I've been afraid of is that I was going to spend another 11 years building the wrong thing." He looked at her hand on his chest, covered it with his. "You're not," he said. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his jaw. Not a kiss. Just contact, the specific intimacy of two people choosing proximity over distance. "I know," she said. "I'm working on believing it." "That's enough," he said. "That's exactly enough." They stood there for a moment in the kitchen of the apartment that was starting to feel like a home while Emma slept on the couch with her elephant and her horse book, and the easy faith of a child who had decided something mattered and acted accordingly. Then from the couch, without opening her eyes, Emma said, "Dad." Nathan and Olivia both looked over. "Are you two done being serious yet?" Emma said, still not opening her eyes. "Because Gerald wants to know if there's dessert." Nathan looked at Olivia. Olivia pressed her lips together very hard for 1 second. Then she straightened up, walked to the refrigerator, opened it, and removed a bakery box that she had apparently been keeping in reserve for exactly this moment. "Gerald," she said, setting the box on the counter, "has excellent timing." Emma opened one eye, saw the bakery box, opened the other eye. "Is that apple pie?" she said. "From Billy's," Olivia confirmed. Emma sat up fully. Gerald was repositioned to a position of attentive readiness. "Dad," Emma said with absolute conviction, "she's the best." Nathan looked at Olivia. Olivia looked at him. And for just a second, underneath the warmth and the laughter that was already happening, something passed between them. Not words, not strategy, not the careful calibration of two people managing a complicated situation. Just the simple, clear recognition of two people who had been lonely in their separate ways, who had found each other in a parking garage on a Tuesday night, who had chosen to stay. He cut the pie. She got the plates, the ones that were unpacked, now settled on the correct shelf in the apartment with the diagonal rug and the velvet armchair that weighed more than it should in the apartment that had a child asleep on its couch and smelled like food made with intention and had a warmth to it. Now that had nothing to do with the heating system. Emma ate her pie with the seriousness of a food critic and the speed of a child who had been waiting patiently and felt her patience had been adequately rewarded. And Nathan sat at the table in Olivia's apartment and thought this. This is it. Not the resolution of the HR process, not the clean documentation or the closed review or the satisfying image of Victor Petrov in Crawford's office for 40 uncomfortable minutes. This. Pie at a kitchen table. Emma explaining Gerald's pie preferences to a woman who was listening with genuine attention. The way Olivia refilled Emma's glass of water before Emma asked. The way Emma said thank you without being prompted because she had been raised by a man who meant it when he modeled what good manners actually looked like. This was the thing he had almost walked past. He was so glad he stopped. He was so glad he stayed. I didn't know then. Sitting at that table eating pie, watching two people he loved figure out the rhythm of each other, what the months ahead would look like. He didn't know about the conversation Emma would have with her teacher, the one where she would describe her family in a way that included Olivia's name without hesitation. He didn't know about the Sunday morning Olivia would finally drive to her mother's house for the first time in longer than she could name, or the phone call she would make from the car on the way home, or what she would say on that call and to whom. I didn't know any of the things that were coming. He just knew that Emma was eating pie, and Olivia was smiling at something Emma said, and the window had the city in it, and the apartment was warm, and he was present, completely present in the way that 4 years of loss and careful management had almost trained out of him. He reached across the table and put his hand over Olivia's. She didn't look up immediately. She finished listening to what Emma was saying. Then she turned her hand over under his and held it naturally, easily, the way you hold something you've decided you're not going to put down. Emma looked at their hands, looked at Nathan, looked at Olivia, said nothing. Just picked up her fork and went back to the pie with the small private smile of a child who has been paying attention to the right things all along and is satisfied with what she's seen. Outside the city moved at its usual pace, indifferent and enormous and full of people making choices in parking garages and diners and hallways. People stopping or not stopping, people staying or walking past. Inside in the apartment on the 11th floor of Meridian Towers, 3 people finished a piece of apple pie from Billy's Diner, and nobody was in any particular hurry to be anywhere else. That was enough. It was more than enough. It was Nathan thought exactly what enough was supposed to feel like. 3 months after the apple pie night, Nathan Brooks woke up at 5:30 a.m. to a text from Olivia that said, "Your daughter called me at midnight." He sat up in bed and read it twice. Then he picked up the phone and called her. She answered on the second ring. "She's fine," Olivia said immediately, because she knew that was the first thing he needed. "She called because she had a nightmare and couldn't fall back asleep, and you sleep like a man with a clear conscience, so you didn't hear your phone." Nathan looked at the nightstand. His phone was face down. The volume was low. He had set it that way months ago when Emma's nightmares had tapered off and he'd stopped expecting them. "What did she say?" he said. "She said she dreamed about the day her mom didn't come home. She gets them sometimes, she told me. She said she didn't want to wake you because you had work in the morning." A pause. "She called me instead." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "How long did you talk?" he said. 40 minutes. Olivia's voice was soft, not the executive cadence, not the careful professional register, just soft. "She told me about the day, what she remembered. She was 4, Nathan. She remembered the color of the shirt your neighbor was wearing when she came to pick her up from preschool because you had to go to the hospital. She remembered it was yellow." He put his hand over his eyes. "She said she talks to her mom sometimes," Olivia continued. "At night, just in her head. She said it helps." A beat. "She asked me if I thought that was weird." "What did you tell her?" he said. "I told her I talk to people who aren't in the room too. That it was one of the most human things a person could do." Another pause, shorter. "And then she asked me something else." He waited. "She asked me if I was going to stay," Olivia said. "In her life. She asked it very directly, the way she asks everything. She said, 'Olivia, are you going to be one of the people who stays?'" The word landed the way it always did. Stay. The same word that had started all of this in a parking garage in the dark, spoken by a different voice. "What did you say?" Nathan asked. "I told her yes." Olivia's voice was completely steady. "I told her that I was, and that she could hold me to it, and that I do not say things I don't mean." "She knows that about you," Nathan said. "I know she does. She told me." A quiet breath. She said, "I know. Dad says you're the most honest person he's ever worked with." And then she said, "He talks about you when he thinks I'm not listening." Nathan closed his eyes. "Emma. She also said Gerald has decided you're his favorite human, but that he likes me too, which apparently is high praise, and I choose to take it as such." There was warmth in her voice now, layered over the softness. The combination of the two that he had come to understand was Olivia fully present, fully unguarded. "She fell asleep around 1. I stayed on the phone until I could hear her breathing change." He sat on the edge of the bed for a moment. 40 minutes. Midnight to 1 a.m. on a school night, talking a grieving 8-year-old through a nightmare about a yellow shirt and a day that couldn't be undone. Staying on the line until the breathing changed. "Olivia," he said. "Don't," she said, not unkindly. "Don't thank me. She stopped, started again. "She matters to me. That's not something I need to be thanked for. It just is." He let that sit where it landed. "Come for dinner Friday," he said. "Emma will want to debrief you on the whole thing in person. She's going to have thoughts." "She always has thoughts," Olivia said. "It's one of her best qualities." A beat. "Friday, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock, he confirmed. He set the phone down, looked at the ceiling. Thought about a woman in her apartment at midnight taking a child's call, staying on the line until the breathing changed and not telling him about it until morning, because she didn't want to wake him either. He got up, made coffee, stood at the kitchen window where Laura's photo was. He looked at it for a long moment. "I thought she would have loved Olivia. Not easily at first, Laura was particular about people careful in her assessments, the kind of woman who watched before she decided. But she would have watched Olivia with Emma, and she would have decided fast. He was certain of it. He drank his coffee, went to wake Emma at 6:15. She was already awake, sitting up in bed with Gerald in her lap and the Horse and Magic book open in front of her, reading with the focused intensity she brought to anything that mattered to her. She looked up when he came in. Her eyes were clear, rested, none of the remnants of midnight visible in them. "You talked to Olivia," she said. "I did." "She didn't tell you until morning," Emma said. "I asked her not to. I said you needed to sleep." Nathan sat on the edge of her bed. "Emma, I'm fine, Dad." She said it with the directness that was entirely her mother's. "I had a nightmare. I talked about it. I feel better now." She tilted her head. "Is that okay? That I called her?" "It's okay," he said. "It's more than okay." She nodded, satisfied, and looked back at her book. "She has a very good phone voice," Emma said. "Very calm, like she's done it before." "Maybe she has," Nathan said. "She hasn't," Emma said confidently. "She told me. She said she's never done it before, but that she wanted to do it right." She turned a page. "I think she did it right." "Yeah," Nathan said. "I think she did too." He made her breakfast, got her to school, drove to the Harmon Group, did his job. That afternoon at 3:15, an email arrived from the office of the COO. Nathan read it twice, then he walked to the window of the conference room where he'd taken the call to read it privately, and read it a third time. The subject line was Logistics Systems Senior Manager position. The body was 4 paragraphs. The relevant part was the third. Following the successful implementation of the revised Midwest routing methodology and the Q4 efficiency results, the position of Senior Manager Logistics Systems has been created within the department. Your name has been recommended by 2 division heads. If interested, please respond by end of business Friday. He stared at the window. Senior Manager. The position that would reorganize his entire reporting structure, increase his salary by a number he had been too practical to hope for, and put him in the room where the operational decisions actually got made. He thought about Marcus putting a sandwich on his desk without comment. About Crawford saying the word impressed in a room where she didn't use words carelessly. About Olivia saying, "I read all the reports that crossed my desk on a dark drive home weeks before any of this." He thought about Emma's summer camp, which he had been quietly calculating could be covered without touching savings if the raise came through. He forwarded the email to Olivia with one line. "Did you do this?" Her reply came in 90 seconds. "I recommended you. 2 other division heads independently recommended you first. I confirmed their recommendation. That is not the same as doing it." He read that 3 times. Then Nathan. "You earned this. 14 months before anyone noticed. Don't make me argue with you about your own competence." He typed back, "I'm not arguing, I'm asking." Her reply, "I know. The answer is, the work did it. I just made sure the right people were in the room when it did." He set the phone in his pocket, looked at the city through the window for exactly 30 seconds. Then he went back to his desk and replied to the COO's email with 3 words, "I am interested." He hit send. Marcus appeared at his desk 4 minutes later, which meant Marcus knew. Marcus always knew. "Senior Manager," Marcus said. "Word travels fast. Word in this building travels at the speed of light when it involves someone who deserves it." He sat down in the chair across from Nathan's desk, the same chair he'd sat in on that first Monday when he'd come to say, "There's a thing going around. I want you to know I put your name in too." Nathan looked at him. "You did. 2 months ago. Before any of this. Before Crawford, before Petrov, before any of it. I wrote a formal recommendation to the COO." Marcus leaned forward. "Because I've been watching good people get passed over in this building for 15 years, because they did excellent work quietly and didn't announce themselves loudly enough. And I decided a while back that I was going to stop just watching." Nathan held his gaze. "Marcus, don't thank me," Marcus said with the exact same inflection Olivia had used at 6 that morning. "Just do the job well." Nathan smiled at that. Yeah, I will. Marcus stood, adjusted his jacket, paused. She's good for you, by the way. Whitmore. She makes you... He considered the word. Visible. In a way you never let yourself be before. Then he walked away before Nathan could respond. Nathan sat at his desk for a moment with that word. Visible. He had spent 3 years at the Harmon Group being reliable, efficient, and quiet. He had done excellent work and let it speak for itself because he believed that was how integrity worked. You did the thing, you documented it. You let the record be the argument. What he had not accounted for was that records didn't advocate. People did. He was still sitting with that when his phone buzzed again. Not Olivia. Not Marcus. A number he now recognized. Daniel Yee. Mr. Brooks. The young man's voice was steadier than it had been the first call. More settled. I heard about the position. I wanted to say congratulations. Thank you, Daniel. I also wanted to say... A pause. I've been thinking about leaving. The company. The situation with Petrov it was not the first time something like that has happened to me here, and I wasn't sure there was a path forward. Another pause. I looked at your routing work, the actual technical documentation. I spent 2 days going through it. And, Nathan said, it's the best systems-level thinking I've seen in logistics in 3 years, Daniel said. I've been doing this 5 years. I know what I'm looking at. He stopped. I just wanted you to know I see it. What you built. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Daniel, he said, don't leave. I'm not sure I have a reason to stay. You have a reason in 2 weeks, Nathan said. When I'm senior manager, come see me. I mean that. A silence. Shorter than the previous ones. All right, Daniel said. I'll come see you. The call ended. Nathan put the phone down and looked at his desk and thought about systems. About how a routing methodology worked, not just the routes themselves, but the relationships between them. The way a change in one carrier's performance affected 3 other legs of the journey. The way efficiency was never one thing, but always a network of small right decisions building on each other. I thought about parking garages and diners and apple pie and a child who remembered yellow shirts and called the right person at midnight. He thought about the way one decision, stop or keep walking, had reorganized the entire network of his life in ways he could not have mapped from the beginning. He thought I almost kept walking. He finished the day. Collected Emma. Told her about the promotion on the drive home. She listened with her head tilted the way she did when she was processing significance. More money, she said. Yes. Summer camp. Yes. Priya's going to the same camp, Emma said. I already checked. Of course she had. And the horse and magic book, he said. Room in the summer schedule for that. Dad. She gave him the look. There is always room for the book. He smiled. Good. Go tell Gerald. She was already telling Gerald. Friday dinner was everything the apple pie night had been and more, because Emma arrived with a prepared agenda. This was not a metaphor. She had written it down on a piece of notebook paper, and she presented it to Olivia at the table with the gravity of a board meeting. Number 1, Emma said. Thank you for talking to me on Tuesday. You're welcome, Olivia said without a trace of condescension or performance. Just received it the way it was given, directly, seriously, with respect for the person who offered it. Number 2, Emma said. Dad got a promotion. I heard, Olivia said. Number 3. Emma set the paper down. Gerald thinks you should come to my soccer game tomorrow. Nathan looked at his coffee. Olivia looked at Emma. Gerald thinks this, does he? He thinks you bring good energy, Emma said. He noticed at the last one. I didn't know Gerald was paying attention. Gerald pays attention to everything, Emma said with complete conviction. That's what makes him Gerald. Olivia looked at Nathan. He gave her nothing the carefully neutral expression of a man who was absolutely not going to help with this, because the negotiation was between Olivia and Gerald, and he had no standing in it. Tell Gerald, Olivia said, that I will be there. Emma nodded, satisfied, picked up her fork. Dinner commenced. They were on the second course pasta, which Olivia had made from scratch, which had produced from Emma the single word legitimate, in a tone of profound respect, when Olivia set her fork down and said with the deliberateness of someone who had been carrying a thing and decided the time had come to set it down on the table. "I want to tell you both something." Emma and Nathan both looked at her. "I got a call this week," Olivia said, "from my old company, before Harmon. They're restructuring their operations division, and they want me to come back. Senior vice president level." She looked at Nathan directly. It would mean a significant change. The word sat in the middle of the table. Emma was very still, which was unusual for Emma. Nathan held Olivia's gaze. "What does significant mean? Different division, different building, different floor?" She kept her eyes on him. "Same city. I want to be clear about that. Same city." He let out the breath he had not realized he was holding. "But a different company," he said. "A different company," she confirmed. "Which would mean no more conflict of interest," he said. "No more reporting chains, no more Crawford's office. No more any of it," she said. "The institutional complexity, the visibility problem, all of it gone." She picked up her water glass, set it down. "I have been thinking about it for 4 days, and I could not decide whether to tell you as a practical matter or as a personal one. And then I realized that distinction doesn't exist anymore. It stopped existing somewhere around midnight Tuesday when Emma called me." She looked at Emma. "Which is why you're hearing this too." Emma looked at Olivia with great seriousness. "Are you leaving the Harmon group because of the people who were mean to Dad?" Olivia blinked. Then she said, "Partly. And partly because I've been thinking about what I want the next chapter of my career to look like, and the answer has changed." "What changed it?" Emma said. "You," Olivia said simply, "and your dad, and apple pie at midnight and soup pot on the stove and knowing what I'm coming home to at the end of the day." She held Emma's gaze. "The job matters. The work matters. But it is not the only thing that matters anymore, and the place where I work needs to match the life I'm actually living, not the life I was living 2 years ago." Emma thought about this with the thoroughness it deserved. Then she picked up her fork. "Okay," she said. Olivia looked at her. "Okay." "It sounds like the right choice," Emma said. "Gerald agrees." She did not consult Gerald, who was on the counter. Some agreements were simply known. "Are the people at the new place nice?" "I don't know yet," Olivia said. "I'll find out. If they're not, you can tell Dad. He's good at handling people." Emma delivered this with the authority of someone who had been watching Nathan handle people for 8 years and had drawn her conclusions. "He's very calm. It helps." Nathan kept his face completely even. Olivia looked at him. "She's not wrong." "She's never wrong," he said. "You said so yourself." Later. When Emma was asleep on the couch again, Gerald positioned for maximum comfort, the horsebook having been upgraded from possible magic to confirmed magic. The dragon had appeared on page 60. Nathan and Olivia stood in the same configuration they'd been in the night of the first dinner. Leaning against the counter, the city in the window, the quiet. "Tell me what you actually want," he said. "I told you. You told me the practical version, the restructured reporting chain version." He looked at her. "Tell me the other one." She was quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that was thinking, not avoiding. "I want," she said carefully, "to stop spending energy on managing the optics of what we are and spend it on what we actually are." She looked at her hands. "I want to show up to a soccer game and not be calculating whether someone from the 4th floor is in the stands." She looked up. "I want Emma to be able to tell her teacher about her family without me having to think about disclosure protocol." She stopped. "I want it to just be a life. A regular, complicated, real life." She held his gaze. "Is that enough of a reason to take a new job?" "That's everything," he said. "It feels big." "It is big," he said. "Take it anyway." She looked at him for a long moment. "You're very certain." "I'm certain about you," he said. "The rest I can figure out." She held his eyes. Then she nodded. "Once. The decision version." "I'm going to call them Monday," she said. "Good. She pushed off the counter, crossed the kitchen, stood in front of him, put both hands flat on his chest, the same way she had in the hallway months ago, checking that it was real. "Nathan." "Yeah." "Thank you for not keeping walking." He covered her hands with his. "Thank you for asking me not to." She leaned her head forward against his shoulder. He held her. In the other room, Emma breathed slow and deep with Gerald and the confirmed magic dragon. The city did what cities do, kept moving, kept demanding, kept requiring people to make choices about what mattered and what could wait. Inside, nothing was waiting. The call happened Monday morning at 9. Olivia accepted the SVP position. She gave Harmon Group 4 weeks' notice, the professional, clean, appropriate amount, because she was Olivia Whitmore, and she did not leave things in disorder on her way out. The 4 weeks were nothing like what Nathan expected. He expected tension, careful navigating. The building's particular way of processing departures, the stiffness, the suddenly formal interactions, the colleagues who recalibrated their behavior based on your new status as someone on the way out. Instead, what happened was this: Sandra Crawford stopped him in the hallway on the second day and said with the directness he had come to respect, "She's making the right choice. And so did you. I want you to know I see the difference between the two." Marcus brought him coffee on the third day, said nothing, set it on the desk, left. And on the 14th day, Daniel Yee appeared at Nathan's office door. Nathan's office now, the senior manager's office, small but real, with a window that caught the afternoon, and said, "I wanted to come see you, like you said." Nathan looked up from the distribution model on his screen. "Sit down, Daniel." Daniel sat. I was younger than Nathan had pictured, 26, 27, with the slightly rumpled look of someone who spent more time thinking than worrying about appearances, which Nathan recognized as a trait worth keeping. "I've been looking at the carrier performance data from Q3, Daniel said. "There's a pattern in the northern corridor that the current model isn't accounting for." Nathan looked at him. "Show me." Daniel pulled out a laptop. They spent 90 minutes going through it. By the end, Nathan had 3 pages of notes, and Daniel Yee was sitting forward in the chair with the animation of someone who has been waiting to have this conversation with someone who could follow it. "How long have you been sitting on this?" Nathan said. 7 months, Daniel said. "I submitted a preliminary analysis to the previous department head. He thanked me for it." Nathan knew what that meant. Filed and forgotten. "I want you on my team," Nathan said. "Formal transfer request this week, if you're interested." Daniel looked at him. "You're serious?" "I don't say things I don't mean," Nathan said. "Emma told me that's important." Daniel blinked. "Who's Emma?" "My daughter," Nathan said. 8 years old, very sound on professional ethics. He closed his notebook. "Are you interested?" "Yes," Daniel said immediately. "Good." Nathan put out his hand. They shook. "Welcome to the team." Daniel left with the expression of a man who had walked into a building expecting Tuesday and gotten something considerably better. Nathan sat in his office for a moment. Thought about systems, about how a network of small right decisions built on each other, about a routing methodology that predated all of it by 14 months, sitting in the archives waiting for someone to look at it. He thought the work did it. The work always does it. You just have to stay long enough. Olivia's last day at the Harmon Group was a Thursday. She did not make a production of it. She did not want a departmental farewell gathering or a speech or a cake with her name on it. She told HR she preferred a quiet exit, and HR, meaning Crawford, understood exactly what that meant and arranged accordingly. Nathan found out it was her last day on Wednesday night when she texted him tomorrow. 9 years in that building, and I keep waiting to feel like I'm losing something. He typed back, "Are you?" a pause. Long enough that he put the phone down and picked it up again. Then, "No. I keep checking, and it's not there. The loss. What I feel is the other thing." He typed, "What's the other thing?" Her reply came fast. "Ready." He smiled at that, set the phone down, went to sleep. Thursday he arrived at work at 7:45 like always, rode the elevator to 7, made coffee, opened his inbox. At 8:30, his email pinged. From Olivia's Harmon Group address, which would be deactivated by end of day. The subject line was blank. The body was 2 sentences. 9 years. And the best thing that happened in this building was a dead battery. He read it twice. Then he replied to her personal email address, the Gmail, not the corporate one. See you tonight. She replied, 7 o'clock. I'm making the pasta again. He put the phone in his pocket and went back to work. The building moved on the way buildings do. Petrov had been quietly transitioned to a different role in a different division. Crawford had been efficient about that, and the rumors had died. The way rumors die when the thing they were about stops being interesting because it turns out to be simply true. 2 people who cared about each other. Nothing more dramatic than that. Nathan was 2 weeks into the senior manager role, and he was good at it, the way he was good at everything, not loudly, not by announcing it, but by doing the work and letting the work speak and making sure the right people were in the room when it did. Daniel Yee was already changing the Northern Corridor model. There were 2 more people Nathan had his eye on. Quiet, excellent, unannounced, and he was going to make sure they were visible. He had learned that lesson, and he intended to apply it. That evening he picked Emma up from after-school care. She had successfully learned the Priya move. She demonstrated it in the parking lot to Nathan's genuine admiration and an older man's complete inability to replicate it, which Emma found unreasonably funny. They drove to Meridian Towers. Emma had Gerald. She was also carrying a drawing she'd made at school, folded twice, which she refused to let Nathan see on the grounds that it was a surprise. For Olivia, he said. It's a surprise, she repeated firmly. From you or Gerald? Emma considered this question with great care. Both of us, she decided. It felt like a both of us thing. They rode the elevator to the 11th floor. Nathan knocked. Olivia opened the door. She was not in office clothes. She was never in office clothes here anymore. She was in jeans, her hair down, and she had the particular quality of someone who has made a decision and is inhabiting it fully without reservation. She looked lighter. That was the word Nathan had been reaching for and hadn't had until this moment. She looked lighter the way a person looks when they have put down something heavy they had been carrying so long they stopped noticing the weight. Emma walked in and presented the drawing. Olivia unfolded it. It was a picture in Emma's deliberate 8-year-old hand of 3 people and 1 elephant standing in front of a building. The 3 people were recognizably Nathan, Olivia, and Emma. Nathan was the tallest. Olivia had carefully drawn hair. Emma had a yellow jersey with a number 7 on it. Gerald was depicted with great attention to the exact placement of his trunk. Above them, Emma had written in capital letters, My family. Not a family. Not one kind of. Just my family. Olivia looked at the drawing for a long time. Nathan watched her. She pressed her lips together. Not to stop herself from crying. Olivia had never been a crier, even in unguarded moments, but to hold something in for just a second before she could speak. Then she looked down at Emma and said very carefully, This is the best drawing anyone has ever made for me. I know, Emma said with gentle confidence. Gerald helped with his part. He's very particular about his trunk. He has good reason to be, Olivia said. It's an excellent trunk. She crossed to the refrigerator and carefully, with the same precision she brought to spreadsheets and supply chain architecture and 11% efficiency gains. She put the drawing on the fridge door with a magnet, stepped back, looked at it. Okay, she said. Good, that's where that lives. Emma approved. Dinner was the pasta again. Better if anything. Olivia had adjusted something in the technique and Emma's assessment was delivered as a single nod, and the word progress, which in Emma's critical vocabulary was high praise. After dinner, Emma fell asleep on the couch, Gerald in position, dragon book open, the city in the window. Nathan stood with Olivia in the kitchen, the same window, the same city. A different version of both of them standing in it. How do you feel? He said. Like myself, she said. A version of myself I forgot I knew. He looked at her. Was she always there? I think so. She looked at the window. I think I buried her under 9 years of being impressive and not letting anything in. A breath. She needed someone to knock on the wall. I didn't knock, he said. I just didn't keep walking. She looked at him. That was enough. He held her gaze. Thought about a parking garage and a dead battery and a woman clutching a concrete pillar pretending to be fine. Thought about Darlene and bad coffee and apple pie and blueberry pancakes that were the rule. Thought about Crawford saying impressed and Marcus putting a sandwich on his desk and Daniel Yee and his Northern Corridor data sitting in the archives for 7 months waiting for someone to look. Thought about Emma at midnight yellow shirt, 40 minutes breathing changes. Thought about a drawing on a refrigerator door. My family. I thought about all the things that happen when you stop instead of walking past. The entire network of it built from one small right decision, the way a routing system is built. The way anything real is built, not all at once, not dramatically, but in the accumulated weight of small correct choices that hold each other up. You know, Olivia said, when I was standing in that parking garage waiting for roadside assistance, I had already decided nothing was going to change that night. I was going to handle it. I was going to be fine. You were not fine, Nathan said. I was not fine, she agreed. And then you stopped, and I was still not fine, but I wasn't alone in it anymore. And that turned out to be the whole difference. Not being alone in it, he said. Not being alone in it, she confirmed. It sounds simple. It is simple, Nathan said. That's the point. She looked at him for a moment. Then she leaned into him the same way she had in the hallway, the night she said she was done managing this, her head against his shoulder, easy and complete. He put his arm around her. In the other room, Emma slept. Gerald maintained his post. The dragon did whatever confirmed magic dragons do in the hours when children are asleep and adults are standing in kitchens, understanding what their lives have become. Nathan held Olivia in the quiet of the apartment that had started as a reminder of an empty life and had become through the accumulated weight of apple pie and diagonal rugs and midnight phone calls and drawings on refrigerators, something neither of them had planned and both of them had needed. I thought about his father, who had told him once when Nathan was young enough to think the advice was simple. The only thing that matters is that you show up and you stay. He had carried that for 30 years without fully understanding it, and here was the understanding arrived at last. Staying was not passive. It was not just endurance. Staying was the active daily choice to be present in the lives of the people who needed you, even when the city was indifferent, even when the institutions were complicated, even when walking past would have been so much easier. He had stayed. She had stayed. Emma, who had always known exactly where she stood and who she trusted, had drawn the picture and labeled it correctly on the first try. And in the apartment on the 11th floor of Meridian Towers, with the city pressing its lights against the window, and a child asleep on the couch, and a drawing on the refrigerator that said, "My family," in confident 8-year-old capitals. Nathan Brooks held the woman who had asked him not to leave and understood completely and without reservation that some people come into your life not with fanfare or drama or the cinematic urgency of things you recognize immediately as important, but quietly in a parking garage at the end of a long day when you are 40 minutes late and your feet are sore and your daughter is texting you about cold mac and cheese. And the whole difference, the entire network of everything that follows, comes down to the moment when you could keep walking. And you stop instead. That was what Nathan Brooks did. He stopped. He stayed. And that made every single thing possible.